It is 5:45, so I will call to order the Thursday, November 3rd, 2022 regular meeting of the Hendersonville City Council. We begin with a silent invocation for people to pray or meditate as they choose, followed by the pledge to the flag. So if you'd rise. Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We allow time for public comment. We have a lot of people signed up this evening. Is there anyone online who wishes to make comment? If so, please raise your hand. We will call upon you at the appropriate time. Anyone there?
I see Lynn Williams. Is Lynn? Lynn Williams has raised her hand.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, we have 8 people, so it's going to be 2 minutes apiece. And when I call your name, if you will come to the microphone and give your name and address for the clerk's record, please. Okay, John Liberatus, is that correct? Okay.
So John Liberatus, 668 Blythe Street, and I'm here on behalf of the residents of Blythe Street from Highway 64 to Fifth Avenue. I have a sign request asking you, with no dissenters, asking you to install a permanent radar sign. Mr. Conant was kind enough to put temporary signs up, and we found that there were 3,000 cars that go through that section alone. Most of them speed. The temporary signs did seem to slow down the traffic. And on that street also are 6 Earl Stillwell homes that are on the National Historic Register. There are 2 homes that are over were over that time frame. They were the latter part of 1800. There also, there's no weight limit for trucks. When they speed and hit dips, it rattles the foundations of all our homes, and we would really appreciate that permanent solar radar speed sign. Okay?
All right, we have your
I gave you all the data.
letter here
Yes,
about
ma'am.
it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
thank you, sir. Adam Johnson?
Adam Johnson, 622 3rd Avenue West. Good evening, my name is Adam Johnson. I grew up here in Henderson County. Now I'm an English teacher at Hendersonville High School, and I'm also the faculty sponsor for the school's Interact Club. We deeply care about the environment, our community, and the concept of service above self. We've made a monthly commitment to keep our school and community clean by adopting the highways closest to our high school and adopting Sullivan Park in the Green Meadows community. Interact Club members also take care of the high school's recycling each week, ensuring that the school is reducing the potential to pollute our local natural spaces and waterways with waste and harmful material. We are happy to serve our community in this way, and I'm so proud of these wonderful students who show up week after week and month after month because they care. However, we acknowledge that efforts like these are a tiny fraction of what's required to protect our community. Climate change is a clear and present danger to ourselves and our way of life. Temperatures and sea levels are rising. Natural disasters are increasing exponentially, both in frequency and intensity. We need to preserve the environment for generations to come, and the consensus among the scientific community is that we are rapidly running out of time to act. Solving this existential climate crisis will require an all-hands-on-deck kind of approach, on a municipal, state, federal, and global level. The benefits of action are multiple. Attacking this problem will benefit the community, not just environmentally, but also fiscally and holistically. The cost of inaction, of ignoring the problem, is unfathomable. We understand that you will soon have a series of meetings seeking input about Hendersonville's upcoming 2045 comprehensive plan. Since more and more North Carolina cities are adopting separate climate action plans, we feel that it's crucial that you consider also adopting similar plans. My students and I look forward to attending future meetings to share our specific ideas and concerns. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Catriel Davis?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Catriel Davis. My address is 404 South Main Street. I've had the privilege to grow up among the kind people and beautiful landscapes of Hendersonville, and I hope that as my classmates and I return to our hometown from college and wherever else the world may take us, that Hendersonville spares itself from the ravages of climate change so that we may continue to enjoy and indulge ourselves in this beauty and share it with others as well. As a member of the newest generation of voters, I want to emphasize that our votes will only be earned through proactive and scientifically backed decision-making on climate responsibility. While proactive measures are paramount, the state of climate change in our community consequently leaves us in a reactive state as well. We presently see the effects of macroscopic levels of climate change in the not-so-fun facts, like the statistic that the past 10 hottest years in the U.S. have occurred within the last 2 decades. We already see regular flooding on South King Street and Greenville Highway that affects local businesses and traffic patterns periodically, and these facts are a glaring reminder that we face the problems which only have the potential to get worse. I urge you all as city leaders to take the threat of climate change seriously by pursuing definitive measures like adopting the Climate Action Plan to protect the property and future of your constituents. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Sofia Fernandez.
Sofia Fernandez, 108 Amelia Drive. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sofia Fernandez, and I'm a senior at Hendersonville High School. I care about the environment, and that is the reason why I chose to join the Interact Club at my school. As an active member of the club, I recognize the importance of preserving the world around us. We frequently do things to help our community, such as park cleanups, recycling in our school, and other ways of helping. In the past 20 years, climate change has become a subject that is talked about a lot, but there is not enough action towards preventing it. We are here today to discuss our concerns and to ask the Hendersonville community to get together, because even though we try to do our part to save the planet, we will have a better impact if we all contribute. It became a controversial topic, but it doesn't have to be. I'm genuinely worried of growing up into a world where climate change takes over. It is a constant fight, but I hope coming today and expressing our concerns could lead to plans that will benefit everyone in our community. I will be attending future meetings to follow up with said plans. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Sophia. Steffi, is it Rausch?
Hi, my name is Steffi Rausch, and I'm a volunteer with CCL, Citizens Climate Lobby, and we're working to help cities across WNC adopt climate action plans. And one thing we hear from towns are that they can't afford it. And I just want to say that there really is a reason that the private sector is leading the transition to renewables, because they find it profitable. Even towns who've adopted plans are already seeing savings. Asheville was able to pay for their first sustainability officer through replacing the LED lighting in their town. Chapel Hill has seen 100,000 savings, 80,000 from doing energy efficiency performance upgrades to their aquatic center, community center, and town hall, and 20,000 from replacing their lighting with LEDs. In Kentucky, the police department saves $7,000 per year in gas and maintenance fees after moving to EVs and plugging their cars into their own utility, paying themselves back, something that the mayor actually helped make happen in Kentucky. I work for Greenbelt Alliance in Asheville, and we have a program called the Blue Horizons Project that was a compromise between the city, the county, and Duke Energy to help reduce the energy consumption of the county. And we are working to educate the community on how to do so. So we just met with the Black Mountain Mayor and had a very good meeting. where they are considering adopting a climate action plan and understand now better how to do so. So if you do want to meet with the people who have helped to enact the Blue Horizons project and work with the city and the county on enacting climate action plans, I would be willing to set up a meeting with my boss, who is very good at talking about those issues. Another thing that we do is Energy Savers Network, where we help people, the community, to volunteer and weatherize low-income homes to help bring the consumption down as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara Hughes.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. Barbara Hughes, 408 North Main Street. It's good to be here with you. Well over 30 years ago, Hendersonville embarked on an ambitious plan to make our town a family-friendly commercial destination for both visitors and locals. Over the last 3 decades, improvements have been made to ensure the positive direction continues. I speak tonight to question the wisdom of social districts in downtown Hendersonville. If it is to allow more alcohol consumption in public areas, this is folly and poorly thought out. We already have 15 restaurants permitted to serve alcohol on the sidewalks of downtown. I don't think the adverse effects can be overstated. We are saturated with alcohol in our area. Who is liable for the DUIs, the wrecks, the injuries, the deaths that will result? If the city attorney says only the businesses that serve the alcohol are the ones liable financially, then clearly the city finds the risk too great for the city. The city should be the primary party responsible for any and all problems that result from this decision. Did you know that North Carolina is 7th in the nation for DUI arrests per 100,000 residents? Number 7 in the nation for for increasing DUIs, and 3rd in the nation, only behind California and Texas, for DUI fatalities. Every officer in Henderson County is confronted with impaired drivers and its consequences. They are the ones that work the wrecks. The NCAOC, which is the North Carolina Administration of Court Statistics for new Henderson County DUI charges, are 441 for fiscal year 2022, up from 411 in 2020. Each of these can easily have resulted in death for the offender as well as innocent victims. If you, the city council members, decide to do this, even if you have been advised that the city is not liable, you are personally and morally responsible for the decisions that you make. Please do not kill the golden goose that is the envy of every small town with more alcohol.
Thank you. Crystal Colley.
Hello, my name is Crystal Colley. I live at 412 East Dermott Avenue. I'm one of the organizers for the Sullivan Park Refresh Project, as well as Indion Jackson and Franklin Black. The Sullivan Park Refresh Project had a positive impact on the city of Hendersonville's Sullivan Park area. The newly refurbished park has fostered community pride and active volunteerism, with volunteers ranging in age of 3 to 75 years of age. Since September the 29th, 2022, our city manager and the Public Works Department has been supportive of our efforts to make this a successful endeavor. The project will be finished this month, and there are many opportunities for individuals to dedicate their time to enrich our city and community. And we were allowed 5 slides for this comment. If you would like to follow this project to view before and after photos, please visit the Green Meadows Community Facebook page. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you to the folks who worked on this project. Lynn Williams.
Lynn, you are unmuted.
Thank you. Lynn Williams, Chadwick Avenue. Okay, today I'm commenting with concerns about Boyd Park. First and foremost, thank you for your time, attention, and service. And thank you to the staff as well. A couple things. I noticed firefighters exercising on the courts and enjoying themselves. And I just can't help but notice that this amenity to be outside and exercising will be lost with the demolition of the courts. It was also brought to my attention from concerned citizens that the response time for the fire department will lag 4 to 5 minutes for the south side of Main Street, where my family happens to live, for up to a year and a half, which in many situations is a public health risk that means the difference between life and death. An addendum to this info is that the firefighters, I believe, last I had heard, were actually dreading this year and a half relocation. 3, there are concerns about soil testing due to previous existence of the gas station. These are all reasons to upgrade our current fire station and historic Boyd Park plans to logical, responsible, and collaborative decisions that honor the work and input thus far while integrating new information as it arises. Mr. Connett explained that the city chose to build on historic Boyd Park to save money up to $1 million. But months ago, we were informed that it will cost an additional $1 million just to build on this unstable sandy soil in attempts to prevent the terrible mistakes made by the engineering and building of the near 20-year young existing Fire Station 1. Please study, save, and repurpose the historic section of Boyd Park that includes the historic mini golf course. There is still time to adjust decisions for the best for all involved. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Williams. All right.
May I ask a question? Is Chief Miller available? I think that there was some inaccurate information given there regarding fire response
he
times.
is.
And I want to make sure that the public is aware that there are not increased fire response times. And is he available to comment?
He is not. He is on vacation. He'll be back next week. I'm sorry. So,
Okay. Can we have him maybe address that?
yes.
Inaccurate information.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you all, especially the students, for being here and keeping us aware of what your concerns are. And we will be working on our strategic plan and see what all we can fit into it. So thank you for being here, and thank you for everyone else who spoke.
So I think she was here to speak a public comment and maybe to email about the sign-up sheet.
Who is,
Did you sign up on the form?
well, you had wanted to speak during public comment? Yes, but I can come back. Okay. All right, yeah, we do have a sign-in sheet that's right inside the door. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, consideration of the agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to have added to or removed from this evening's agenda?
I do.
Okay,
Madam Mayor, I ask that number 10 under the city comments in October 6 minutes, it should read for correction. It should read Council Member Debbie Roundtree expressed thanks and appreciation to the Hendersonville Police Department for hosting National Night Out. It says something else. It says Black Mountain Police Department.
So you're asking us to correct the minutes? You're asking
that's
us
the
to?
next section.
Oh, okay.
This is just approving the agenda
Okay.
that we have. Is there anything anyone would like to have added to or removed from this evening's agenda?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to remove both items under 8, unfinished business, item A and item B, to a later meeting.
Okay? That is establishment of social districts and American Rescue Plan discussions. Any objection to removing these items from this evening's agenda? Okay, if not, then we will remove those 2 items from this evening's agenda. Is there anything else anyone would like to have added to or removed from the agenda? Not a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Madam-
Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay, those in favor of approving the amended agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it, and that we do have that agenda. Now, the consent agenda. And you wanted to make correction to
Corrections.
the minutes?
Under city council comments,
Mm-hmm.
on page 22, number 10, it should read, Councilmember Debbie O'Neill Roundtree expressed thanks and appreciation to the Hendersonville Police Department for hosting National Night Out.
Okay. Any objection to making that change to the minutes? Okay, thank you. Consent agenda, is there anything anyone would like to have moved from the consent agenda to the regular agenda so it can be discussed? Or if not, a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda, including the amended minutes.
Madam Mayor, I move that City Council approve the consent agenda as amended with the amendment to the minutes.
Is there any discussion? Not. All those in favor of the agenda, including the amended minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Those are all taken care of. Presentations, we have a lot of presentations this evening. So I'm going to be calling people forward, make sure I've got them in the right order here. Yes, I think so. Okay. Oops, excuse me. First one is in regard to Homeless Youth Awareness Month. Michael Absher, there you are, right out in front. Very good. Whereas the month of November is designated as National Homeless Youth Awareness Month, as declared by the U.S. House and Senate in 2007, and serves as an outlet to increase public awareness of an ongoing issue occurring in every city across the United States. And whereas the nation's public schools report between 1.5 and 2.3 million homeless students, grades pre-K through 12th grade. And whereas we realize that when adolescents become homeless, being separated from their caregivers and homes for various reasons, which often place them in precarious situations, that school is often the most safe and stable environment for these youth. And whereas we recognize in Henderson County that roughly 2.5% of our youth are identified as homeless. And whereas Only Hope WNC Incorporated is a local nonprofit whose mission is to promote the value of education, honor individuality and diversity, nurture respect for self and others, and provide hope for young people in need of the community. And whereas an effort is being made by the board members of Only Hope WNC, Inc. by hosting its 11th annual Sleep Out on November 4th to November 5th at the historic courthouse on Main Street in downtown Hendersonville, in an effort to draw attention and support for youth homelessness in Henderson County. Now therefore, the City Council of the City of Hendersonville does hereby proclaim the month of November 2022 as Homeless Youth Awareness Month in the City of Hendersonville, and applaud the efforts of those who serve and help fight youth homelessness in Henderson County.
I just want to thank y'all, City Council, for our support every year for letting us do the sleep out. You know, keep it going every year and hopefully become bigger and bigger every year. So thank y'all.
All Thank you, Michael, for organizing it and making this awareness.
At least it'd be warm.
It should be more than some years. American Indian Heritage Month, Sharon Moran. Sharon is not here? Okay. I will read it. Whereas the history and culture of our great nation have been significantly influenced by American Indian and indigenous peoples, and whereas the contributions of American Indians have enhanced the freedom, prosperity, and greatness of America today, and whereas their customs and traditions are respected and celebrated as part of a rich legacy throughout the United States, and whereas Native American Awareness Week began in 1976, and recognition was expanded by Congress and approved by President George Bush in August 1990, designating the month of November as National American Indian Heritage Month. And whereas in honor of National American Indian Heritage Month, community celebrations as well as numerous cultural, artistic, educational, and historic activities have been planned. Now therefore, I, Barbara Gold, Mayor of the City of Hendersonville, do hereby proclaim the month of November 2022 as American Indian Heritage Month in the City of Hendersonville, and urge all citizens to observe this month with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. Next, Dr. Janet Bull. Dr. Bull. This is a proclamation and appreciation for Seasons Compassion for Life Foundation for Dr. Janet Wool upon the occasion of her retirement. She has served for the past 22 years as Chief Medical Officer of Compassion for Life Foundation and leaves behind her an impressive legacy of service. The governing body Hendersonville wishes to publicly extend our congratulations to Dr. Bull on her retirement and acknowledge her contributions, which were built on the foundation of knowledge she contributed throughout her career. So you will see that she gets that resolution. And then a certificate of commendation to Franklin Black. We do have Mr. Black here with us. So this is to Franklin Black for distinguishing himself through dedicated, selfless service by giving him his time and talents in restoring and painting the free little library number 155314 box, located in the City of Hendersonville, Sullivan Park. The natural talent of creatively painting the library to look like a treehouse with diverse characters will encourage children and teens in this city to read more. Franklin has also helped dedicate countless hours to participate in the Sullivan Park Refresh Project. His efforts and leadership are sincerely appreciated. Mr. Black's performance is in keeping with the highest standards and reflect distinctive credit upon himself and the City of Hendersonville. Thank you, Franklin, for being an advocate for improving literacy and positively impacting the Green Meadows community.
Thank you for the recognition. The contributions were definitely not of my own. My family was there. Miss Crystal, thank you for setting me up for it.
Okay, we appreciate Crystal bringing you to our attention. Thank you.
Well done.
And now we have the MVP awards, right?
And we're going to recognize, I'm going to ask Tom Luke to come first to recognize Andy Brogdon and Patrick Warren. So if Andy and Patrick will come forward.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mayor. It gives me great pleasure to recognize Andy Brogdon and Patrick Warren tonight. Both of them have worked very hard to achieve their Master Automotive Technician certificates from the ASE certification program, which is no easy feat. Both of these gentlemen took 8 different exams and had to successfully pass them in order to achieve this. For those of you who don't know, it's ASE is a education and certification process that's set up and recognized by the whole entire automotive industry that allows technicians to go and get trained and certified, but it allows these companies to show that they have employees who are educated, and it builds trust in their organization to show their customers, or to build trust with their customers to show that they've got certified employees. So, certificate, and here's Patrick's certificate. And in addition to those two, Patrick also obtained his medium and heavy-duty truck technician certification, which is also another 8 exams. So, congratulations. Good work.
Get out there that quick.
Thank you, Tom. Tom called me, and we want to make sure we recognize Andy and Patrick. We had challenged the fleet division to take these certification classes, and I appreciate their leadership. They are our 2 leaders and supervisors in that division, so they're leading by example. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we would like to present our MVP. For those of you who don't know, we provide, we have a service excellence program. That is part of our culture in our organization, is to provide excellent service, and we recognize our employees quarterly who have gone above and beyond the call of duty to serve our citizens and our customers, and this recognition is voted on by our entire team, so they have to impress our peers, and we have several recognitions for tonight. So I'm going to ask first John Buchanan and Savannah Tankersley to come up. I'm going to give John the certificate so he can present it to her after I read what she did. So I'll ask Savannah to come forward. So Savannah was actually recognized for 2 distinguished recognitions tonight, or 2 Service Excellence Awards. First, she was nominated by her peers. Today, Savannah went out of her way to walk with an umbrella into the pouring rain to make sure a woman who had her newborn grandson didn't get soaked or cold. So made sure that Savannah walked her and her grandson to their car. And then secondly, we had an elderly customer who was very unsteady on his feet come in to make a payment on his water bill. After taking the payment, Savannah walked him out to the parking lot, providing support to wait until his ride pulled around the parking lot circle to pick him up. This shows exceptional customer service to someone who needed extra assistance in more ways than just making a payment. So, and I can tell you from my experience, Savannah's always cheerful, and always, when she calls to let me know somebody's downstairs for a meeting, she does a great job. So, Savannah, thank you for what you do and going above and beyond. Savannah Tankersley. So at this point, I'm going to ask Brent Detweiler to come forward so we can present awards to Dustin Moffitt, Mike Huffman, and Steve Alverson. So if Jennifer will come also, since Steve is in HR. So I swear Mike there's Mike. There he is. Dude. So want to present awards to, and Dustin's not here, but for Mike and Steve. You will. So Steve and Mike and Dustin, Steve in HR, he's Safety Steve to everybody who doesn't know who Steve is, and then Mike Huffman and Dustin Moffitt in engineering, our stormwater division. These 3 gentlemen, a culvert recently collapsed under a city road and damaged a fence maintained by a homeowners association. Once the culvert was repaired, Mike, Dustin, and Steve took ownership of the fence damage, rebuilt it, and recently painted it. All of this is obviously outside of their normal responsibilities. We could have hired a fence company, but they chose to do it themselves. But in resolving the situation, they promoted the excellent service provided by the city to its residents. So Steve, Mike, and Dustin, thank you for a job well done, and appreciate your extra effort. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
And finally, I'd like to ask Chief Mahan to step forward with Alan Bonanno, Diamond Wright, Sam Capps, and Robbie Baird.
Oh, there's right here, Chief? Yeah. Don't turn sideways.
These four officers with the Hendersonville Police Department, they responded to a medical call. Lieutenant Bonanno, Officer Wright, Officer Capps, and Officer Baird showed great care for the patient when they offered to finish the patient's delivery route. The patient was delivering orders for Walmart when he had the medical emergency. So the team took charge and delivered the groceries and sundries to the Walmart customers. They showed a great attitude, ownership of the situation, and teamwork, and they value everyone. They represented the city with professional care. Officers, thank you very much for a job well done and going above and beyond. Thank you for service.
That's all?
I always photobomb their photos.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Thank you to all those recipients for just demonstrating the care that our employees take with their jobs and for the citizens of Hendersonville. Next, the 2022 audit. And Mr. Buchanan.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Tonight we are presenting the results of our fiscal year 2022 financial audit. Tim Lyons with our audit firm Malden & Jenkins is here to present.
Thank y'all. I know based on some of the comments that were being made as the reports were getting passed out that this is really why y'all are here tonight. So we'll try to only take up 45, 50 minutes of your time and then I'll be done. So I've got up on the screen a short presentation that I'm going to go through, and you've got in front of you a hard copy of the report. So predominantly what I'm going to be talking from are the PowerPoint slides, but you have the report in front of you. There is one thing I want to show y'all and look at, but we'll mostly be going from the slide deck. So a brief agenda, going to go over the engagement team, the results of the audit. We've got a few slides and some financial ratios and some trends, and then comments, recommendations, other things that we just want to keep the city abreast of as we kind of conclude the June 30, 2022 audit. Just as a way of reminder, we have this slide in all of our presentations. I know this is our second year working with y'all, and we really appreciate the opportunity to serve the city of Hendersonville. I served as the engagement partner on the city's audit, which means that I'm ultimately responsible for the quality of the report and for the working papers, for supervising the team, and then for signing the report when we're done. I had a director who we actually hired this year who lives up here in North Carolina, and she's got 12 years of experience auditing governments in North Carolina, working on my team now, and then a senior associate who was kind of predominantly over the day-to-day of the job. And then when we finish, when the engagement team finishes, we send the audit, the report, everything to a secondary quality control review partner who's completely separate of the engagement, who is also in our governmental practice. And so lots of different folks looked at the city's audit to make sure that we did everything that we were supposed to do, dotted all the I's and crossed the T's before we formally signed off on the report. So I know that you all are familiar with these required communications, as they're called, but just to kind of go over and reiterate that when we're conducting an audit, you know, this report here is the responsibility of the city's management, and our responsibility is to give an opinion on it. And so we conduct an audit in accordance with auditing standards accepted in the United States of America, also in accordance with government auditing standards because of the significant amount of federal and state dollars that the city spent this year, which was also part of our audit. When you look through here, the city's financial statements also include the Hendersonville ABC Board, which we do not audit. So we include that in here, but we make reference to the other auditors who conducted that audit. So, and then our report, our opinion, kind of the culmination of the audit is to express an opinion on the financial statements, and that opinion is unmodified, which is a fancy accounting auditing term for a clean opinion. So there's no higher or better one. So the clean opinion on the city's audit. And I do want to just pause here for a second and have y'all flip real quickly in the hard copies, starting on page 1, which is after the introductory section. It's the page that has our Malden and Jenkins header on it. This is the first page of the opinion, and I know sometimes, folks, if you're going to look at your audit, you may compare what this report looks like compared to previous audits. If you do that, you'll notice that the form of our auditor's report has changed significantly from the past. This is not because of anything that the city did. It's just because the way that we have to communicate an audit opinion changed this year. There were some new audit standards that went into effect. The report, if you can believe this, got longer. And so there's just a lot more to it this year. So I would encourage you, I think it does a better job of laying out what our responsibilities are, what management's responsibilities are, kind of the things that we do look at, the things that we don't look at during an audit, and ultimately what an opinion means. So did just want to draw your attention to that in the report. As we move through the next few slides, again, this is kind of what is referred to as the required communications. These are things that I have to communicate to you all in writing, which I have done through this PowerPoint presentation, but I think a few of them are important enough to touch on, so I'll do that briefly. Underneath significant accounting policies, part of what we do when we do an audit is we look at the accounting policies that are in place by the city. There was one new accounting standard the city was required to implement this year, Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement number 87 regarding leases. So there is some new leasing information disclosed in the city's financial statements, some new accounts we had to work with the city to make sure we got those all booked correctly under the new standards. So that is a difference from previous years. Relationship with management, I always think it's important to point out to the board, not because when it says we receive full cooperation, this doesn't mean we were, buddy-buddy hanging out too close, that kind of stuff. But I think it's important for the board to know that we had full cooperation from management during the conduct of the audit, meaning when we asked for records, supporting documentation, access to people within the city we felt like we needed to speak to, John, Crystal, the whole finance team, and everybody else that we were asked to speak with during the whole conduct of the audit, we had full cooperation from the city this year. Audit adjustments. Last year we had a couple of past adjustments where we identify something that's maybe a little bit off, but it's not off by a large enough amount that we have to fix it. We didn't have any past adjustments this year, so everything was recorded and is reflected in the financial statements this year. No past audit adjustments. And then last but not least, auditor independence. I think it's always important to remind folks that we have to be independent with regard to the city, or else we cannot issue this report. Not only do we have to be independent with our AICPA professional standards, but also government auditing standards take some of those kind of to the next level, because we are talking about public money and public funds and auditing those things. And so we meet all of those criteria, not only under our professional standards, but also under government auditing standards. So in addition to conducting the audit on the city's financial statements, we are also conducting compliance audits. The city expended more than $750,000 in federal funding this year, and expended more than $500,000 in state funding this year. And so we're required to go through a kind of a decision matrix, if you will, and identify major programs. We had 3 major programs to audit this year: the Community Facility Loan Program, which is from the USDA, the EPA Drinking Water State Revolving Funds, and the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality Connect NC Bond Fund. So 3 separate compliance audits, all of which were given clean opinions on compliance, no compliance issues, no internal controls issues over compliance. The summary of those and the actual reports are the last, kind of the back 15 or so pages of the report that is in front of you. A few slides on some financial trends. Looking here at the city's general fund, blue representing total inflows, revenues, and other financing sources. Total outflows in red, expenditures and other financing uses. We're seeing growth there in both areas. We're not seeing expenditures or outflows significantly exceeding revenues. So I would say these are all positive trends here from not only are we growing, but we're also not exceeding or dipping into fund balance significantly in year over year, those types of things. This chart here comes directly from the Data Input Workbook, which is a big spreadsheet that we are required to submit to the Local Government Commission at the conclusion of the audit. This shows fund balance available for spending in the city's general fund. The minimum threshold that the LGC sets is 25%, and as you can see there, in 2022, the city was at 30.12%. So above the LGC's required minimum. I know last year we were a little bit below that for a couple of different reasons, just some timing of some cash flows and some projects, but this year we're back above that and at 30.12% at June 30, 2022. A big driver of your general fund revenues, obviously, is going to be your property taxes, and so looking at assessed values continuing to go up, tax rates going up by a couple of mils or a couple of cents per $100 of assessed value over the last, from 2021 to 2022, with values staying the same. That's one of the drivers of having some increased property tax revenues this year, which helped get that fund balance back up above that LGC required minimum. Some budgetary highlights real quick in your general fund. What we have here is the original budget that was adopted by the city. We have the amendments that went on during the year, and then the final budget, and then just a quick little comparison to the actual. As we can see there, actual revenues exceeded final budget by about $340,000, and the largest variances there were property taxes and sales taxes came in a good bit higher than what was budgeted. Actual expenditures were below final appropriations by about $2 million. The largest individual variances there having to do with the public safety function with some vacant positions and those types of things. Most importantly, I think the final amended budget reflected a budgeted use of fund balance of approximately $3.1 million, whereas actual results came in, about $127,000 added to fund balance. So kind of right there where revenues were just enough to fund what went on at the city during fiscal year 22. We also have a couple of budgetary highlights on the enterprise funds. Nothing really significant here that I would point out. I mean, these are always the types of things that I want to look at and say, okay, are we doing a good job budgeting? Are we doing a good job forecasting revenues and expenses, how much it's costing us to provide these services? Are we concerned about rates or anything like that? And as you can see, the stormwater one looks a little bit strange because it was a decision that was made during the year about billing some properties that were decided not to bill. So that's why that actual looks a little bit different from the final. The water and sewer budget and the parking, obviously the parking services fund as a new fund this year. But all in all, budgets were not showing, significant, that net change column for actuals, not showing significant expenditures over revenues, not deficit spending or anything like that. And then last but not least, I think it's important for y'all this is actually a disclosure in your financial statements as well. So this comes directly out of the financial statements. This disclosure is included in the book in front of you on page 54. But this is the water and sewer fund. That the outstanding bonds that y'all have in your water and sewer fund have a rate covenant, which means that we have to have a certain amount of coverage to make sure that we got adequate cash flows and adequate reserves to make our debt payments. And so this calculation is required and is disclosed in your financial statements. And essentially what this does at the top is all revenues of the water and sewer fund, all operating revenues of the water and sewer fund. And then current expenses are the expenses of the water and sewer fund without depreciation. Depreciation on capital assets is a non-cash item, so we take that out. And then we compare that to 100% of expenses, 120% of principal and interest. So we're looking at how much net revenues, if you will, plus what was available in the surplus fund from last year, which is just your cash and investments last year, plus what we had this year in operations. How much was that over and above what was required to be made as far as debt payments go in the current year? And so there's two different covenants that we've got to have: revenues plus 20% of the surplus fund greater than that first group of expenses, principal and interest, and the second one, both of those covenants, you can see the city met both of those covenants with adequate reserves plus cash flows for the current year. So that's good and that's positive. And again, that comes directly out of your financial statements as well. We had one kind of what we refer to as a management recommendation, a comment in our management letter, not a finding. We had no findings in the report this year. So we had the city's got a lot of projects going on, as I'm sure you all know. It's really important for us that we know exactly which buckets of funding all these different projects are coming from. It was properly identified on the schedule of expenditures of federal and state awards that it was state money, not federal money, but just the specific bucket of state money. So we had to make a tweak to that because there was a recommendation from the LGC, hey, this is actually not this one type of funding, it's this other type of funding. So we just had a recommendation, hey, let's just make sure we stay on top of this in the future. This is nothing to be super concerned about, just one of those things that we know that with the LGC providing a comment about it last year, we wanted to double check and make sure we got it right this year. Last but not least, a couple of slides here on just some new accounting pronouncements that are going to come up that we'll be making sure the city is ready to adopt. Of the three that are on the screen here, probably the one that will have the biggest impact has to do with compensated absences, which just how the liability and how and when the city, along with all other local governments, record the annual liability for leave that employees have earned. So there's going to be a new standard. It's going to change how we calculate that. Liabilities for that are probably going to go up because right now we have this concept of vested versus non-vested where we only record a liability if it's vested. Well, that's kind of going away, and now we're going to use some different criteria that by and large is going to cause this liability to go up in future periods. So the rest of this is just kind of more informational stuff for the city and for mostly for the finance folks. As a reminder, we do free quarterly CPE for all of our governmental clients. If any of y'all are interested in being added to our distribution list, please feel free to let me know. I'm happy to get you on there, and we can really blow you away with a bunch of accounting stuff. With that, I am happy to take any questions that y'all have.
Okay, and questions for Mr. Lyons?
Just one comment, Mayor, just to thank Tim and particularly our staff, our finance department staff, John Buchanan and Crystal Powell. It is November 3rd, which is deadline for, the recommended or the requirement to submit your audit is October 31st. Not many people make that deadline. We did this year, or very close, within a couple days. So one day. So I'll take one day. Sometimes we're getting this presentation in December or January. So I want to thank and recognize Tim, but also our staff for all their hard work because they work, John and Crystal work very hard to make sure that all of our staff got bills in and things were closed out at year end, which is really the biggest lift for our staff. So thank you very much and appreciate the work that y'all have done. And just remind council that this is your audit. These are your auditors. They do not they work with the staff, but not for the staff. They work for the city council. So if you have any questions and want to have conversations with them away from this table, individually or as a group, privately, not privately, but in a more controlled setting is what I'm trying to say. So they would be glad to do that because they do work for you. So thank you.
Anything? Thank you. We do appreciate it. The brevity And, and I think the clarity, too. We do
Great.
appreciate that.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
You and
Thank
your-
y'all.
Your team as well as our team. Right, public hearings. We have one public hearing, and this was the one we postponed from last time.
Yes.
So we will just go ahead and open that public hearing again. Does staff want, you want to make a initial
Yeah, I'll have a presentation.
and then we'll take comments.
Absolutely. Good evening, City Council, Madam Mayor, good to see you all. This application, the city received an application from Dan Mock related to the multifamily, the use in the C2 zoning district within the 7th Avenue Municipal Service District. Essentially, the proposal was to expand multifamily uses from the National Register Historic District, the C2 zone properties in that historic district, to the C2 zone properties within the MSD. And the brief rationale, and we'll get into more detail on this, is for this would be to expand opportunities for dense infill residential uses in a walkable location, address housing needs, foster economic growth, and to retain the vision for a vibrant commercial district in the district. So this map is very key to kind of understanding what's being proposed. All the area that's purple and noted as CMU, that's shown on the map and throughout the whole city, that's zone CMU, permits multifamily uses currently up to a height of 64 feet, 5 to 6 stories. The area that is zoned or shown in yellow is C2. Outside of what's shown on the map, or anything outside of the red area, C2 does not allow multifamily. C2, multifamily is permitted currently in C2, only in this blue shaded area. And so I previously mentioned the purple in this blue shaded area already permits multifamily, but the yellow parcels that are within the light blue area is the only location in the city where that's zone C2, where you can have multifamily uses, and only on second floor. You cannot have those multifamily uses on the first floor. And that light blue area is the city's, is designated as a National Register Historic District. It's a 7th Avenue Depot National Register Historic District. That is not a local historic district. You don't have to get a COA to make changes to the exterior of your building in that district. It is simply recognized for its historical significance, and it has the boundary that's shown. And that boundary is being referenced for a zoning standard for C2. The request is to permit that multifamily uses, those multifamily uses, to extend to the yellow parcels that are outside of the blue area, but within this red boundary. And so that is the request, to extend not to the rest, C2, to the rest of the city, but essentially along the 7th Avenue corridor and to the properties that abut the rear of the properties that front 7th Avenue. So taking a look at the district, a few photos. The upper left picture is looking at the National Register Historic District from Maple Street. The upper right photo is a vacant lot where there's, it's in the MSD that's currently used for a food truck. When I reference the MSD, I'm essentially referring to areas outside the historic district that are just in the MSD. The two bottom photos show some zero setback buildings that are in the MSD, further to the east of the historic district. The upper left photo shows a multifamily use which fronts 7th Avenue. It's actually not zone C2, it's zone R6, but it is a multifamily use that fronts 7th Avenue currently. The upper right photograph is a auto service use that is in the MSD, and the bottom left picture is a zero setback, medium-sized structure currently used for residential uses in the MSD. And the upper right, you can see that same building off in the distance, but this is the far eastern edge, looking back west from around the area of the Greenway, looking at the corridor. So this text amendment, which we'll get into the details of, the real specifics of shortly, came to the Legislative Committee of the Planning Board at the end of August. All of the members of the committee were in attendance, and there was a good, healthy discussion about the proposal, and there was some discussion of some modifying the applicant's proposal to address some concerns, mainly related to residential being used on the ground floor. And so there was a proposal to limit the amount of ground floor space that would be allowed for residential uses, and there was general support for that middle approach, which I'll present shortly. That same discussion carried on to the Economic Vitality Committee of the Downtown Advisory Board in early September. Another good, healthy discussion. From that meeting, there was general support, but there was they wanted to clarify and put a percentage on the amount of residential that could be permitted on the first floor. And so the proposal continued to take shape. It went to the Planning Board in September, and another healthy discussion. The members voted 5-1 in favor of the proposal, which I'm about to present. And some of the points were mainly focusing on that this was creating a mixed-use district, and it was fulfilling some of the goals as outlined in the comprehensive plan, which outlines a vision for that area, and there was some conversation about what that vision is. The Downtown Advisory Board met in September and discussed this item. There were no planning staff in attendance at that meeting, so hence why it came up last month and was carried to this month. We wanted another opportunity to be there, to be in attendance with the Downtown Advisory Board to discuss this item. The consensus, the takeaway was essentially another very thorough, healthy discussion. At the end of the day, at the end of that conversation, there were no issues with multifamily on the upper floors, but there were concerns expressed related to there being not reserving the first floor for non-residential uses. And so this brings us to the language. Currently, this is what our language states. So in our supplementary standards for C2, for residential dwellings, multifamily, you have to meet these criteria to be able to have multifamily. The property must be within the 7th Avenue Depot National Register Historic District. Multifamily dwellings may only be permitted on the second floor. There shall be no maximum density other than the minimum dwelling size is 400 square feet. Multifamily dwellings must be occupied by 3 or more families living independently of each other. The applicant then submitted a petition for a zoning text amendment with the following, changing from the property must be within the 7th Avenue Depot National Register Historic District, striking that and replacing it with the Municipal Service District. So thus expanding the footprint where multifamily would be permitted in this area. They also proposed to strike the second line, which would then allow the multifamily use to be permitted on any of the floors. And the rest of it was left alone. So I've kind of hinted at all this, but essentially this is the proposal that is before City Council this evening that was recommended by the Planning Board. The first line is the same as the applicant proposed, expanding the use from the historic district to the MSD. The second item, multifamily dwellings may only be permitted, striking second floor, replacing it with upper floors, because you can have up to 48 feet in the C2, so you can have more than 2 stories. So upper floors within the 7th Avenue Depot National Register Historic District. So it would retain full non-residential use of ground floor in the historic district. And it goes on to say that any building fronting 7th Avenue within the 7th Avenue MSD, but outside of the 7th Avenue Historic District, shall primarily reserve ground floor space along the 7th Avenue street frontage for non-residential uses. Alternatively, ground floor residential dwellings may be permitted as an accessory use in the following circumstances. A maximum of 50% of square footage on the ground floor may be utilized for residential uses. Access points to ground or upper floor residential spaces may be located at any point on the front, side, or rear of a building, which may include an access point adjacent to any ground floor non-residential space along the primary street frontage. And under frontage, ground floor residential dwellings may front upon an alley and/or private or non-street public spaces under the following circumstances. Notwithstanding any building code provisions, frontage upon private property shall provide a permanent access easement to the closest public right-of-way. So essentially, that is preserving the frontage along 7th Avenue for commercial uses, with at least 50% of that being for commercial, and no more than 50% of any of the rest of the ground floor space being utilized for residential purposes. And those residential uses could not front 7th Avenue. The density statement remains in with no changes. And then there's a proposal to strike item D, which is essentially regurgitating the definition of multifamily. It's already in our zoning code elsewhere. No need to clarify that what multifamily means in this section. And then there's another addition. The minimum front setback may be reduced to 0 for multifamily uses within the 7th Avenue MSD. Any off-street parking provided shall be located to the side or rear of a building. So that is the proposal based on the feedback from the Downtown Advisory Board, which is not statutorily required that we present this to them and bring their motion to City Council, but to reflect their feedback, we have some alternate code revisions, which essentially permits multifamily on upper floors throughout the MSD, which reserves the entire first floor, ground floor for commercial, rather than the 50% split. Otherwise, it is the same. So, getting into the comprehensive plan, the first criteria for a text amendment, there is a good bit from the comprehensive plan, so bear with me as I move through this. The downtown core and downtown support designations on the future land use map states the following goals. Downtown core, maintain, enhance, and grow downtown as a vibrant mixed-use gathering place and cultural center with an emphasis on retail, arts and entertainment uses. Maintain a highly urban, pedestrian-focused environment through building and streetscape design. The downtown support goal states, support the downtown retail core and create a transition between downtown core and adjacent residential neighborhoods. Both of these districts recommend multifamily and live-work units as primary recommended land uses. Staff and the planning board recommend staff finds that the text amendment is consistent with the goals and recommended land uses for these two designations. The land use and development chapter goes on to include relevant goals and strategies, which include encourage infill development and redevelopment in areas planned for high-intensity development, review the zoning standards and revise as necessary to enable compatible infill projects, consider a full range of short and long-term impacts when reviewing zoning code changes, update the zoning code to ensure conformance with the comprehensive plan. The population and housing chapter also promotes a mixed land use pattern and compatible infill, and goes on to say allowing redevelopment and or reuse of single-family homes that directly front on arterials into office or high-density residential uses in coordination with the future land use map. And PH2 states encourage a wide range of housing types and price points in order to meet the diverse and evolving needs of current and future residents, match the housing supply with the local workforce, and promote diverse neighborhoods. The natural and environmental resources chapters had no relevant goals or strategies. The cultural and historic resources chapter states to preserve the viability and individuality of Hendersonville's historic neighborhoods in order to maintain their role in supporting community pride, livability, and identity. Promote investment in and adjacent to historic districts through compatible infill development particularly on currently underutilized non-historic properties. Support increased downtown housing and office density in order to support retail uses and create a 24-hour environment. The other chapters of the comprehensive plan did not have relevant goals or strategies. The second criteria for considering a text amendment relates to compatibility. There's three main components to this. The proposed multifamily use, the 7th Avenue MSD contains a wide range of land uses, including multifamily, as well as being home to the city's farmers market. In relation to the commercial uses on the ground floor, this provision is in place currently in the National Register Historic District. This provision would remain in place in full for the National Register Historic District, where a mix of uses is most likely to continue to occur, and it would remain in place in part in the MSD with the provision of maintaining non-residential uses on first floor frontage along 7th Avenue. And the third consideration is reduction of setbacks. Minimum front setbacks are currently found in some locations in the MSD. A reduction in setbacks allows for greater flexibility and more efficient utilization of land. A more walkable urban form is achieved by allowing for buildings to be brought closer to the street to form a street wall, and by reducing minimum setbacks, which allows for the shifting of parking to the rear of a lot. The third criteria is changed conditions. We've seen renovation and redevelopment occurring in the 7th Avenue area. This activity is likely to occur along Locust Street and 7th Avenue corridor, extending east. There's also well-documented growth in demand and undersupply of housing in our region. The fourth criteria is public interest. Again, looking at the three main provisions, the expansion of multifamily would permit additional density in a highly urbanized, walkable location. The provision to maintain commercial uses on the ground floor helps to protect the vision for the 7th Avenue corridor as established in the comprehensive plan. And the reduction of the minimum setbacks provides greater flexibility for redevelopment and provides an opportunity to shift parking to the rear of a lot, though it is not mandated throughout the C2 district. The fifth criteria, public facilities. The C2 is an urban location that is well served by public facilities currently. And the sixth criteria, effect on natural environment. In this case, there are no known or anticipated negative environmental impacts associated with the petition. This, as I stated, this went to the planning board in September. They voted 5-1 to recommend adoption of the text amendment as modified and presented by staff today. And they adopted the following consistency statement. The future land use designations of downtown core and downtown support call for recommended land uses and design guidelines that align with the proposed text amendment. And they went on to provide these 5 points of rationale for approval, which are shown on the screen here. And I'm available to answer any questions on those. Also have provided a draft rationale for denial with these 2 points of rationale for denial. And I'll open it up for any questions.
Questions? No? Okay, thank you. All right, we have opened the public hearing. Is there anyone else with the developer like to speak regarding this? Yes, please.
My name is Carrie Moores, and I own the building at 824 Locust Street, Suite 200. I am here in support of this application, the plan being residential above 50% on the ground level to be commercial and the commercial to be frontage. I believe Mr. Mock has come to the area and invested in the area in good faith, and unless he proves otherwise, I am happy to embrace his enthusiasm and support for the 7th. I look forward to the building beautification, expanded foot traffic, and the increased safety that I believe will come from what he has proposed. On August 20th, 2022, the Legislative Committee of the Planning Board noted, quote, vibrant pedestrian-friendly experience along 7th Avenue as redevelopment occurs. I am hopeful that the board feels this way about all of the 7th, both the MSD and the NRHD, not only street 7th Avenue. I believe generous parking for those living in Mr. Mock's units and those visiting the ground floor frontage businesses should be required. The sidewalk out front needs to be as wide as can be achieved and maintain that, quote, vibrant pedestrian-friendly experience. From the Comprehensive Plan Consistency, Article 11.4, it states under public facilities, the 7th Avenue MSD is an urban location that is well served by public facilities. I have to point out that I do not completely agree with this. As we move forward to the future of the 7th, with its amazing new growth, a major public facility is parking, and we are not well served with parking, and it must be addressed and resolved by the city very soon. I ask the city to approve Mr. Mock's application, but I request that the city continues to work with all of us, new and old, so that the 7th has that vibrant pedestrian-friendly experience and abundant public facilities that the city claims is its goal in this incredible revival of its historic center.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to comment? Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, staff, and attendees. My name is Dan Mock. I'm actually the applicant. My wife and I moved here about 3 years ago, and her being an equestrian, she spent the last decade during college and post-college, and she really considers North Carolina home. We've made the move here in 2020 due to COVID, as she feels like it's a much safer environment here for our family. And believe it or not, I'm not the big California developer that everyone envisions. In fact, the majority of my upbringing has been the complete opposite. I've been fortunate enough to build a small real estate portfolio, and of which I've started selling in the last 3 years, and I've been buying exchanging properties here in North Carolina, particularly in Hendersonville. I'm just a one-man shop, and I'm relocating my business here. I've got a passion for real estate, a vision, and an eye for designing great properties. Just fortunate to have an amazing wife to help me with all of our interior design. I wanted to address the concerns that a few people had over the course of all the meetings, just so everybody is up to speed on, I guess, the things I've said and the miscommunications. I mentioned change in the neighborhood, and I want to clarify what I meant by that. What I mean by change is to address the neighborhood blight by repositioning and restoring underutilized or abandoned buildings, by cleaning up the neighborhood so we can embrace a more pedestrian-friendly and walkable community. Let's change the sleepy streets and create a more vibrant atmosphere where we can see families hanging out on the streets with their kids. I envision a street with bustling businesses utilizing indoor and outdoor spaces. I use the term hipster. Hipsters are young, arts-focused professionals who do not necessarily have wealth, but are at the forefront of creating trends. They prefer neighborhoods with an edge. Most importantly, they're conscious of the environment, the carbon footprint, and the quality of the food they consume. The hipsters are the ones who zealously support the local businesses. From what I've seen, White Duck Taco draws in a mixed crowd, some of which I would consider hipsters. There's a concern about the zoning text amendment creating a downzoning effect. In actuality, it's considered upzoning when you're adding additional uses over what's currently allowed. The current uses allow such things as wholesale, service stations, repair stations, farm equipment sales, convenience stores, auto service, and a car wash. The zoning text amendment would allow for mixed use. Anytime you have residential as part of a mixed-use project, it's more than likely going to be more vibrant just because of the new people you're bringing in. The residential component will elevate the type of retail that's driven into the local businesses. It's highly unlikely that you'll see someone mix in a service station with residential. What you might see is like a coffee shop, which is something I think is much needed on 7th. I also heard a comment about how multifamily would be cheap or cheaper to build. It would actually be cheaper for me to build commercial because all I'd have to do is go in there, demo, change out, upgrade the exterior windows and doors, and then leave it a blank slate. Just to give you an idea, The photos that were shown in the past, I guess, I don't know if you guys had them. They were examples of what I've done in Los Angeles. I've spent anywhere from $55,000 to $250,000 per unit renovating these units. I can assure you they won't be cheap. Cheap is the guy who comes in with a $5,000 or $10,000 lipstick job and does some paint and carpet work. Cheap is the guy that fools his clients by doing a facelift renovation and doesn't change out the electrical, plumbing, or HVAC. All our projects are torn down to the studs. I start by repairing the foundation, any structural issues or waterproofing issues, and then I replace everything with brand new materials. I have many of the same finishes, including the same tile in my 55,000 square foot studios that I have in the 3.5 to 7 million custom ground-up homes I've built. There was also a concern about residential on the ground floor for the entire corridor. As the developer, finding the highest and best use is a chief priority when deciding what to do with a building. If residential was the highest and best use, there would be no commercial on the ground floor at Main Street. If I owned prime retail space on 7th Avenue, I would not be considering, near Marco's Pizza, I would not be considering residential there. The building isn't configured for residential, nor is that the highest and best use. The reason I'm asking for residential here is because one of the buildings is already a non-conforming residential building, and both buildings are surrounded by residential directly in front of it, to the side and behind it. There are also vacant commercial spaces on the prime block of 7th Avenue. And if these spaces in the prime block are not being leased out, why would someone come and lease out commercial space in arguably the worst block where my buildings are located? The 50-50 commercial and residential on the ground floor definitely gives me an alternative option for someone that wants to come in and do like a live workspace. Another concern with the zoning text amendment change is that everyone with commercial buildings will convert to residential. The zoning text amendment mirrors the zoning on Main Street, and that's not what has happened there. On Main Street, there are thriving businesses on the ground floor with residential above. The purpose was the same, to bring life, vitality, and people to Main Street. I have every belief that we can bring the 7th Avenue district up to that same level. I'm not the guy that's going to go and demolish a beautiful building for profit, but I am the guy that will take an underutilized building, restore it to its greatest potential, and make it the best building around. There's a concern about how these units could be priced so high that people wouldn't be able to afford it. I'm only human. I can't predict the market, nor can I control rents. The market will dictate how much these units rent for. What I can tell you is that the additional units these projects will provide will be a substantial addition to the much-needed housing stock. Everyone talks about the housing shortage, and I'm offering a solution by providing these much-needed units. In addition, it's beneficial to balance out the neighborhoods, and it'd be nice to have some market-rate units across the street from an affordable housing project. Lastly, I'm converting a drug and prostitution house known as a problem by HPD, and I'm cleaning it up with the hopes of attracting tenants that will make a positive impact in the community. In the short amount of time I've owned the building, I've seen multiple drug deals go down in front of me with adolescent kids in the car. Every time I'm on site, it happens. I've had multiple break-ins to the point where, if you guys have driven by, I've boarded up that building on several occasions. The last incident was over the weekend on Sunday, where there was a break-in, and Joe, the former manager who he managed the property for, the previous owner, I let him store stuff there, and he got all his tools stolen. He later found his table saw at the local pawn shop down the street. Not to mention, we were locked out of our own building, and I had to call HPD to break down our own door and help us regain access. I don't want to waste taxpayers' dollars on anything that I can typically handle, but it just got to a point where it wasn't worth jeopardizing our safety going into a building if we didn't know if there were people in there. It amazes me how this was not addressed in the past, but I get it from a business perspective. I would make more money if I sat here and did nothing and collected the Section 8 rents. It's really none of my business how these people make their money, but if there's illegal activity being conducted on my properties, I have to be responsible and do something about that. I take great pride in my buildings. With all this information, I implore you to put yourselves in my shoes. If this were your building, what would you do? I really have to give it up to HPD because the minute I called, the 3 officers that were in uniform and the 4th officer showed up within 3 to 5 minutes, all of them. Had a game plan, went in, ended up having to replace the door, but hey, I'll take that all day long. But just to let you guys know how bad it is in California, last year when I sold a duplex, that one of the properties you've seen up here, it got broken in every single day. I had graffiti all over it. I was sending my guys there to remove the graffiti every day. And I'd have my guys wait 4 to 6 hours. The police would never show up, or they'd show up, get another call, and leave. So just being here in Hendersonville in North Carolina, we're so grateful. And my wife was super happy when I got a North Carolina license. So thank you guys for your time. Really appreciate your time, consideration.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mock. Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this?
I'd like to comment.
Yes, sir. If you could give your name and address for the clerk's record.
Aaron Stevens, 507 South Avenue, Executive Auto Detailing. I am one of the Section 8 applicants that he already have evicted. There's 3 families have lost their homes already in that area. And I dispute what he was saying. I don't have too much information because I wasn't prepared for it. But I don't believe what he was saying about the drugs and all that. He's trying to make it look dangerous and all that type of stuff. 7th Avenue has potential of being a great area if we all work together as businesses and families and a community, not just one person who makes all the decisions and purchase all the property in that area, in my opinion. And I don't agree with everything he said, but I think we should take more time and investigate what's going on with the community, with that area. So I would like before you make a decision, let's allow more time for other people to come to the meeting and speak of all the dangerous areas that he's talking about, the drug dealing and all that, because I live in that area and I operate a business in that area, and I don't see what he's talking about. Okay? But I'd like for you to oppose the plan, and I'd like for you to take more time and let's think about it. God bless.
Thank you. May I respond to that? Is there yes, you can. Again, you have to come forward.
I'm sorry, I don't even know who you are. I've never seen you. So if you think I evicted you, you said I evicted you.
Yes, I have signed a contract with the WNC Source, and I was supposed to move in, but you stopped all the projects, you stopped all the work on the projects, and two families was evicted. You gave them 30 days to get for everybody to move out that apartment before you boarded it up.
So,
I mean, it's
false.
not passed yet, but you've already boarded up the building and stopped everything.
100% false. I have an affidavit from Joe, who used to be the manager for HVL Properties, who owned the property, who sold the property to me. Joe told me 2 of the 3 units were vacant, and I have the affidavit signed by him. He's never told me anybody lived there. Michelle does live there. I have 1 tenant in there. I did give her a notice. I haven't evicted her. We're working things out right now. But she told me to go the lawyer route, so I asked her for her email, and her response was, I have a lawyer, talk to my lawyer. So my lawyer's handling that. The people that were supposedly there, I have agreements with them, and I gave them money when I didn't have to give them money because Joe said those were vacant. And I did that out of the goodness of my own heart. And then I gave I gave Joe's grandson some money. Every time he sees me on the street, he asks me for money, so I just give him some money, whatever. But there's no leases there. Joe has confirmed that nobody is supposed to be in there. And if you guys want to see the agreements, I have it. So I have no idea what this,
Yeah.
I don't even know who he is, frankly.
Okay,
So-
yeah, this is, yeah, okay, this is, excuse me, this is another issue that really is not relevant to a zoning decision. So that will have to be worked out in some other venue than this. So, but thank you for your comments. But we'll go on to the appropriateness of this zoning text amendment. Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding the zoning text amendment?
You have two online, Mayor, if no
Yeah,
one else.
we'll want to see if there was anyone else here first. Okay, if you could call up the people who are online, please, who wish to comment.
We have Lynn Williams and Ken Finch, so maybe Ms. Williams go first.
Okay, that's fine, whoever.
Lynn, you are unmuted.
Okay, thank you. Lynn Williams, Chadwick Avenue. Gentrification. Google says the process whereby the character of a poor urban area is changed by wealthier people moving in, improving housing, and attracting new businesses, typically displacing current inhabitants in the process. Wikipedia says gentrification often sees a shift in neighborhoods' racial and ethnic composition and average household income as housing and businesses become more expensive and resources that had not been previously accessible are extended and improved. Was this part of the strategy for locating the new police station in this soon-to-be gentrified neighborhood? Planning ahead to serve the community that will replace the one already there for many generations. By not requiring builders to adhere to the mixed-use zoning development, you incentivize the development of high-density housing developments in mixed-use zones. This would any potential economic gains by removing the business areas potential from these mixed-use zones. Builders will always seek highest profits, which means housing over commercial. I just don't think community members know about this hearing, as we have been in stride with your current timeline for the envisioning and rebranding of the 7th Avenue district. I believe decisions made about this area need to be determined by the good people and families who have built and maintained this area, especially in regards to the incredible Black community. 7th Avenue Committee was dissolved recently into the Downtown Advisory Board. My previously concern with this dissolution was unequitable representation within the Main Street merchants' priorities. It is my understanding that the Downtown Advisory Board has even been in opposition of this privileged request by this newly relocated California developer. Would it make sense for this gentleman, wouldn't it make sense for this gentleman to join the community in the process of development already laid out and entrusted by the people? You previously hired a diversity consultant for their feedback in conjunction with the city's appointed Diversity and Inclusivity Committee. What is the feedback from these stakeholders? The council is 80% Caucasian. How are you making your informed decision tonight to ensure racial justice and equity? My grandmother shared stories with me about Hendersonville's racial history and the segregating of communities to 7th Avenue. For generations, incredible local Black families and individuals invested their lives into the sustenance and history of 7th Avenue and the surrounding neighborhoods. We need to support the people who have been here and maintain our word toward Hendersonville's diversity and inclusion policy and act with integrity towards our fellow residents. The developer has allegedly already purchased some affordable housing units, evicting 2 units already with another resident she's forced into eviction December 1st before the holidays. How is this honoring and respecting the people who live here already? My understanding is the Historic Preservation Commission has been discussing the distinctive features on 7th Avenue that can be considered for increased historic designation. What is the HPC's feedback in regards to historic use? Please integrate insight from the Historic Advisory Board, HPC, and the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. The reason you maintain the bottom floor is as storefront is to provide jobs for residents living above, promoting sustainable growth and urban sprawl. No entry on bottom floors in urban developments, in urban areas. Is this the new gated community? How will you protect affordable housing and the current demographics of residents who live here now and are a part of the fabric of our community? The community Will it be the community or this newly relocated California developer who's requesting to jump the line of all the residents who are in support lockstep with the city council re-envisioning process? Please respect your residents with your continued commitment in the 7th Avenue re-envisioning process outline so you can include the feedback you have created to maintain your newly designated diversity and inclusion goals to ensure racial justice and equity in your legal, zoning, and administrative decisions. Community pride and identity. Do the 4 out of 5 council members who did not grow up here know about 7th Avenue's community pride and identity? Keep your word. Honor the process that has been laid out for the redevelopment of 7th Avenue, historic 7th Avenue. I will utilize my white privilege to protect the history and neighborhood built by the Black community. I insist we must protect our historically Black community, historic Black communities. How will we maintain affordable housing and honor the commitment, the community pride and identity of this historically Black neighborhood? Speaking of hipsters and artists are used in the transition zone that puts the foot in the door for gentrification until the hipsters are too priced out by condos similar in price to the Cedars project, now only blocks away. Why not ask for conditional zoning of one building instead of the entire district ahead of our current community planning process? The reason Main Street still has storefronts on bottom floors is because it's regulated by the HPC. 7th Avenue is not. HPC is working on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Mr. Fitch?
Ken Fitch, you are unmuted.
Ken Fitch, 1046 Patton Street. As first presented to the planning board, it was readily apparent that this proposal has been brought before you to facilitate a specific project. The presentation to the planning board included extensive project information and site-specific visioning, perhaps as an innovative, adaptive reuse of existing properties. The issues arise that as a text amendment, this would facilitate multifamily development in the district beyond the specific project site. And as a text amendment, multifamily would be allowed by right without the standards or guidelines that would be essential for this district where compatibility is an issue, especially with the National Register Historic District, which is a defining element of this 7th Avenue district. As for the reasons for the amendment, it is stated to restore neighborhood blight to creatively designed architectural buildings consistent with the neighborhood and the surrounding area, which sounds wonderful. But here there are no such standards to ensure creative design or consistency or compatibility with the neighborhood. And the concern is, I'm echoing some recent comments by the Mayor Pro Tem, that much of the new construction in the region all looks the same, is not particularly distinguished. It does not look like some of the designs that we saw in Mr. Mott's presentation. And that is the concern, because without the standards, the appearance and character of the neighborhood could easily be altered. And as stated by Ms. Moore, there's a particular problem about parking. And there is no particular parking requirement in this district where there are existing storefront businesses with street interface that depend upon readily available accessibility. The future introduction of multifamily density without required on-site parking would overburden the existing street parking critically necessary for sustained commercial viability of the area. This is not covered by development by right, but it is a major factor as has been brought to you. The multifamily proposal only requires 50% of the ground floor be allocated for commercial. The problem is this is not beneficial for the kind of destination commercial activity which has been envisioned for the district. The 7th Avenue District is an area of the city for which so many have worked so hard for so many years to restore and revitalize this unique area with its special historic character, and to do this as an area with commercial destination potential. Commercial destination potential. And there have been considerable planning and financial investment by businesses, residents, as well as the city government with its own initiatives, and also in partnership with housing assistance and other entities. There are ongoing ventures with visioning, branding, streetscape design, enhanced connectivity, and community inclusivity. The text amendment, with its facility of development by right, with no conditions, standards, or any type of guidance, would have a potential to subvert the work, the very fine work that is underway. And indeed, the Downtown Advisory Board raised very serious concerns about this as a text amendment rather than as a larger planning format. And inescapable, as you have just heard, is the tension with the insertion of market rate housing and the concern about the displacement of the workforce housing historically present here. And as you've heard, there is a lot of concern and a lot of strong feeling in the neighborhood, which this process is just going to aggravate without the clarity, because we're talking about development by right, so there's no conditions or standards that govern the process. And indeed, in the packet, there were instances where the language was not helpful, such as the citation that the new market rate units would likely balance out the affordable units. Well, for some, given their previous inflammatory statements about development, this terminology would seem code language for gentrification. And the previous speaker talked about that. And when you bring that term into consideration, it's an area of great sensitivity. And that is part of what is involved in this, because this is only a text amendment. So all of these strong feelings then are generated by what is not clarified. The current initiatives and the partnerships that are ongoing in the area, along with the continuing outreach, are in a process of constant evolution for a positive vision for the entire area. And that thus it's complicated by the appearance of a text amendment, when really a more comprehensive, inclusive process to revitalize the area is underway, and it needs to govern what happens here. And many stakeholders recognize the need to address housing options for the future that might be compatible with the district. But the reality is that to introduce high-density residential directly on this historic corridor as a text amendment without any measures to address considerable impacts on the district, especially a district as envisioned as a commercial destination, would just create another range of intractable issues. And perhaps this is not the optimal way to proceed going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitch. Is there anyone else online seeking recognition?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay. I do have two digital comments that came in. The first is from Ilsa Tolles, 822 Locust Street. I am writing this letter in support of Dan Mock's zoning text amendment in the 7th Avenue Municipal Service District. I first met Mr. Mock in January 2021 when he was initially interested in the former Coca-Cola bottling plant building. He is very transparent with his project and keeps me updated every step along the way. I think what Mr. Mock is doing with these rundown abandoned buildings is great for the community and local businesses. The additional units will not only help with the housing shortage, but also have residents live on the downtown streets, will make the area safer and promote a more pedestrian-friendly environment. I have no doubt that what Mr. Mock builds on 7th Avenue will have a positive impact for the community, its residents, and local business owners. As a local business owner, we welcome all the foot traffic we can get around here. I can't imagine any business owner who would oppose Mr. Mock cleaning up these buildings, providing much-needed housing, and driving customers toward our local businesses. I'm in support of Mr. Mock's zoning text amendment in the 7th Avenue Municipal Service District. The second one is from Michael Baer, Guidon Brewing, 415 8th Avenue East. I would like to express my support for the project that Dan Mock is proposing to allow residential on the ground floor in the 7th Avenue Municipal Service District. Any project that will convert an existing building to a more useful purpose should be strongly considered and approved by the city. The 7th Avenue District will benefit greatly from both increased residential housing and new commercial spaces. With the city already in the process of rebranding 7th Avenue as the vibrant, up-and-coming part of Hendersonville, developers and property owners who want to use these buildings in ways that will support the city's intent to improve the district and attract more businesses, residents, and tourists should have every chance to do so. Thank you for your time. Michael Baer. Okay. Is there anyone who wants to make one last comment? Yes, sir? And if you'll give your name and address for the clerk's record.
Ronnie Pepper, and I'm going to give my address as 1508 Lincoln Circle, place to go. Mr. Mock, I commend you for what you're trying to do. My first question is, have you had an opportunity to go to the neighborhood and meet any of the residents on the opposite side of 7th Avenue, the ones that live in Green Meadow? Because what you're planning on doing, you are going to attract residents. You're going to attract business. But what will happen to those individuals that live down in Green Meadows? Whatever you do on one side, you have to do to the other side. In the 1960s, urban renewal happened at 7th Avenue. And that was a black community. Of course, being black in the 60s, there were some things that individuals did not have. They didn't have a lot of access to work and to financial income. However, because of urban renewal, a lot of those individuals were moved out. And it seems that the same thing is happening now. Years later, we think about what we want to bring to Hendersonville, but we're not thinking about the individuals that it's impacting, the residents that live there. Shirley Davison, Debbie Roundtree's mother that lives in that neighborhood. Have you met any of those individuals? Have you went to the church and talked and met with any of those individuals? Those individuals struggle every day. They work hard. And what you're planning on building is beautiful. I love it. It looks good. But what is that going to do? How is that going to impact those individuals that live in that neighborhood, that grew up in that neighborhood when it was Old Brooklyn, and now it's 7th Avenue? And what will happen to the name that it's going to cause from years later? I guarantee that's going to change the name. And the individuals that you're bringing in, and the businesses that you're bringing in, how are they going to assist those individuals? I see them having to be forced out. Where will they go? This is something you talk about, the historic district. There's history in Henderson County, in that neighborhood. There was businesses there. They struggled, but they were businesses. They were cafes. They were cab companies. Not like what is offered on Main Street, but they were businesses. And what will happen to those? Have you thought about it? Have you talked to any of those individuals? Only thing that you're seeing is what it's going to bring in. People think about the finances, but the thing about it is people. When it comes down to it, it's about people. And whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Because what you're building, you're going to grow some individuals. You're going to bring people in at a different income. You're going to bring a little bit of diversity. But what happens to the individuals that have lived in this city, in this area, for years and years and struggled, and then have individuals talk about how we want to do things better for them? How is that going to make their life better with the buildings that you're bringing in? I look at it and it looks great, but it's not compatible. Have you thought about talking to them and seeing how you could work together so it will improve that area without pushing individuals out? And one of the things that we always talk about is about the drugs. There's drugs everywhere, okay? You talked about California, what happened in California. It's going to be there. But those individuals that live there, they don't want it as much as you do. But have you talked to them? Have you tried to see how you can balance it out so that they win and you win also? Otherwise, you're just going to move them out. And you talk about a historic district, you talk about bringing things good to Henderson County, but what are you doing to the residents that live there? I challenge you to go back and look at the history of that area. And I guarantee you there's probably only about 2 or 3 in this whole place that know anything about 7th Avenue. And I challenge you. It's easy to come in and see what you want differently and make it and change it to your vision. But what about the individuals that live there? How would you feel if somebody came into your neighborhood and told you what you needed and how you needed it and changed it without thinking about what you have put into it, how you have worked hard and you have struggled and you did your best? We always frame things from a deficit. We always talk about the badness and we focus on that. What about the good? Are you saying that there's no good on those individuals that live in Green Meadows and on 7th Avenue and those businesses? I would challenge you. Go talk to them. Talk to them. Find the history of it out. And then look at what you got planned and how they struggled and did the best that they could all these many years. I'm done.
Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to comment? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Pepper. You said some things that I was thinking about, didn't have the nerve to say. But my name is Dorothy Williams, and I live at 1406 Martin Circle. And thank you for having to open up for everybody to say something. Where I live at, it's a lot of going on there as far as traffic. With the Boys and Girls Club, I'm looking to not have a business in Green Meadow section where the houses are. We don't need any business in that section because of the mill up the street, right across the street from the Boys and Girls Club. We got that. And with the Boys and Girls Club, we have plenty of traffic. I live down on the corner, and I have people just come down the street and make a turn. And then if we get more houses built, we have to think about the price it's going to bring into it now, and to the neighborhood where people on low income. Most of the time they're saying now houses are renting something for $1,500 a month. Some people got 3 kids and maybe just a single mother trying to pay. She needs 3 jobs almost to pay that kind of money and plus take care of the family. So we get new houses or new apartments, we have to think about the price that the individuals have to pay. And what he's talking about it makes sense too, but you still need to think about the profit that you're gonna make and then how the other people have to suffer or go without to make their rent. Because it's not easy, especially, like I'm on disability and retired and my house is paid for, but I still have other bills to pay. And it's just gonna be hard, so we need to think about that too. and think about the traffic that's in and out of this area. 7th Avenue would be fine, fix it up, and business come in. But as far as bringing business into the neighborhood, we don't need that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Is there anyone else who would like to comment? Okay, we'll close that public hearing. All right. Could I ask staff to pull up one of those maps and show us again very clearly what area we're talking about? And we're talking about a zoning text amendment which would relate only to these particular properties.
Yes, Madam Mayor. The change as presented would impact, I'll do my best to outline, but it's the yellow parcels that are within this red boundary, not the orange ones, just the yellow ones, that are also outside of the blue boundary. The blue boundary already permits multifamily, so this would be expanding it to the other parcels. So half of those front 7th Avenue, more than half, take both sides of the road. And then there are, another section that don't front 7th, but they abut the rear of the properties that front 7th. So there's a strip there. And then, there's some irregular shaped and larger parcels on this side as well. And then a couple down here. So you'll see this, it's a number of lots, a lot of small lots. There's not a whole lot of large parcels or large tracts within that area.
So it primarily is what faces 7th Avenue. Those that are behind, are those currently residential or
As you get
most of them?
As you get to this end of 7th in particular, some of these are residential in nature in this block. And my understanding is that these properties, which I don't know the name of that street. Someone here may be able to help me. M Street? Those fronted there are primarily residential as well. I don't know how many of those might be multifamily already versus single family. We don't have a current land use map, nor is the data we have currently up to updated.
Most of them are single family.
Single family homes as you start to move in to the area that CMU, again, that area in purple permits multifamily as you go towards 64.
The CMU is already multifamily.
It is. There's no density cap and a height limit of 64 for residential uses, 64 feet.
Okay. Other questions?
CMU also permits, it's a mixed-use district, so it permits some commercial uses as well. Just want to point that out.
Comments then, if there are no further questions. Anyone?
Okay, I have lots of thoughts. I see the beauty of having multifamily housing within 7th Avenue. I think the issue that I think I am personally having with it, and what it sounds like residents are having with it, is that it's so open-ended. So all of it being by right, no design standards, no any sort of zoning fail-safes to include some sort of affordable housing or workforce housing, while it's a beautiful development, I just can't help but feel like history is going to repeat itself again. I'm sure back when urban renewal was happening, people thought they were doing the right thing. And I think by bringing more multifamily housing into the area, it would be the right thing if it wasn't so open-ended. So we're doing the 7th Avenue branding, we're working on the streetscape, we're working on our comprehensive plan, and this feels very haphazard to me the more that I've sat with it. So the way that it is, I don't think I can support the zoning text amendment right now.
Other comments?
I don't know, I support the zoning text amendment because I feel like we've been preaching infill and infill and infill for the past 3 years. And, you know, I think one of the gentlemen that spoke in public comment earlier mentioned, you know, that this is business and family, which seems like this actually provides kind of the best of both worlds. I don't know that it is our legal ability to control rent or to tell people what they can charge for their property. So that's kind of my concern is, are we, you know, stifling growth or development as a measure to control rents? And I don't think that that's what we as a policy group are tasked to do. I think that the idea of being able to have business and family in the 7th Avenue district is a fantastic idea. It would be great if developers would offer workforce housing and, you know, for residents to be able to afford it. But I guess my concern is right now it is commercial, and, you know, a developer can come in and buy a building right now, convert it into a commercial space with no residential ability. And so then we're really at a loss, because then the inventory continues to drop, and then there is no home, there is no place. And so, you know, for a developer to want to come in and do some mixed-use developments where we have the best of both worlds, where we have commercial spaces, where a business can thrive on the main street portion, and then people can still live and work there, I feel like that's our goal. Or at least those are the things that we continue to talk about. So that's how I feel, and doesn't sound like there's support across the board for it, but I support the text amendment.
Anyone else?
I apologize. I have a question.
Yeah.
It's really
Go ahead.
for Matt. So, Matt, just to clarify, we're talking about multifamily. So if a person wanted to put an apartment for one person to live in, not one person, for a family to live in, that's allowed?
Single family and two family is permitted in the C2 currently.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
As just a response to the question that you asked, single-family apartments are going to be astronomical in price. The density is what allows a developer, or anyone for that matter, to, you know, make it more affordable. Because if you are converting a 2,000 square foot second floor or third floor or fourth floor commercial space or building space, and you're renovating it, those condos that are going to be sold for $2 million, or those rents that are going to be $4,000 a month, because that's what that space is that's the market rate in that development or that area. To me, that's even further from what we're trying to do. And so I think that the density is what allows us to continue to provide adequate and affordable housing, as opposed to something that is going to end up having to be sold, which by right can happen right now. Those can be $2 million high-rise condos in 7th Avenue. And to me, that's not the vibe that we're trying to create there either. And so, you know, the mixed use and higher density is something that I think we need.
No, I'm sorry, public comment time is over right now, but thank you. Okay. Anyone else want to comment?
So I don't support the zoning text amendment. Also, with the housing crisis that we're experiencing, and which we're experiencing it all over the United States. And the affordable housing, we are limited in this area. And with the feedback from some of the residents that already live in that area or live in one of the occupied buildings that he has purchased, I just don't support it. And I also see gentrification. We're headed for rapid gentrification. So I just don't support it right now.
Anyone else? I think we do need more multifamily. With the commercial on the lower floor, I think we're keeping with the mixed use. It would be lovely to think that these properties could be rehabilitated and kept at low rents. It's just, if someone like housing assistance could buy it and do it, it would happen. But with the market the way it is, it won't. And keeping properties that are below standards there is also, to me, not a viable way of keeping and growing a healthy 7th Avenue. So I do support the proposed text amendment, and feel that it is appropriate for that area. Anyone else want to comment?
Well, I agree with Lindsay and with Debbie.
Okay. Anyone like to make a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move City Council deny an ordinance amending the official City of Hendersonville zoning ordinance, Article 16, supplementary standards for certain uses, Section 16-4-24, residential dwelling, multifamily, based on the following. Number one, the petition is found to be consistent with the City of Hendersonville 2030 Comprehensive Plan based on the information from the staff analysis in the public hearing, because the future land use designations of downtown core and downtown support call for recommended land uses and design guidelines that align with the proposed zoning text amendment. Two, we do not find this petition to be reasonable and in the public interest based on the information from the staff analysis and the public hearing, and because, one, the reduction of front setbacks would permit a more distinctly urban form. Two, the allowance of additional density would be incompatible with commercial uses in the 7th Avenue Municipal Service District. Three, the provision to permit 50% of the first floor for residential uses for buildings fronting 7th Avenue would result in the loss of viable commercial property.
Okay. Is there any discussion? If not,
I just have one
go
comment.
ahead.
Because what I'm concerned about happening here is exactly what's going to happen, is developers are going to come in, and they're going to buy these spaces, and they're going to convert them into what they can do right now. And if we think that that's pricing residents out of that neighborhood now, wait until what's going to happen is going to continue happening, and they're going to sell $1 million and $2 million condos down there, and no one will be able to afford to live there except the vacationers that are coming here buying up property. So it's unfortunate that this is what's happening, but that's my last comment, so.
Any further comments? Not. Those in favor of the motion to deny the text amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed to the motion to deny, say aye.
No.
No.
Okay. Aye also. The motion carries 3-2, and so that zoning text amendment has been denied. Okay. Thank you all for your comments. And consideration. All right. You want to take a 5-minute break? Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break. Okay, so we are moving on now to new business. First, ADA obstructions in Hendersonville, Amy Siegler. Hey.
Don't worry, I'm not gonna talk all night. I'll take this right. But my daughter's so sad. I sent her home to bed and she's like, set my hand on the bed. Nights in the morning are scary. I promise, I'll make this quick. Do I need to say my address?
No.
Do I need to? Okay. I was like, oh, okay. So I'm Dr. Amy Sigler. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lindsay, for giving me the floor. So I own LimTech, which is a mobile seating and positioning clinic, and accessibility, which all of you are like, oh God, what is she going to talk about? The audit guys, did they leave? Don't worry, I won't spend money. So what I really am here to talk about is making it more friendly. The first thing everybody thinks of is, great, you want to come in, you want to change buildings, you want to add all these things, right? That's not my plan. My plan is to make downtown more aware. How many of you have Facebook? Yeah, so about 18 months ago, there was a huge fight on Facebook about accessibility in downtown because everything is solved on Facebook, and I got tagged about 470 times. The first thing somebody said was I should go back where I came from. I'm from Anchorage, Alaska. I don't do cold weather. So here I am. My family moved here in 2014, and I am raising my children who have all gone home in bed. So I decided to take this task on myself. So one of the comments that was made was go back where you're from, and if your kid is in a wheelchair, they can drive down Main Street in your wheelchair. Has anybody worked with kids in wheelchairs? Not always safe, right? Like they're still learning. Not safe at all. So I realized then it wasn't nefarious, it was lack of awareness, lack of education. So I had a student this summer, and we went around downtown and took pictures of downtown. We made a Western North Carolina accessible Facebook page, and everything on that page is positive. So if your business is not being showcased, it's probably because you have accessibility issues. There was a couple businesses we went into, I offered to meet with them, and they said, absolutely not, we're not really interested. So that showed me that people are so scared that I'm gonna come in and tell them to get rid of all of their business, their stuff they sell, right? Because they're so scared of what accessibility means. So I'm not gonna read you guys the stats, okay? You guys can all read. I'm trying to go very quickly here. But North Carolina ranks number 8 in the nation for an aging population. These stats are just aging. My population in my business is from 0 to my oldest patient was 102 years old. Accessibility is not just aging in place, but Henderson County, many of us live here or have moved here to age in place, correct? So if you look at the stats, by 2040, 2.7 million Americans will be over the age of 65. We want that money here in Henderson County. This county will not continue to grow without our younger population helping all of us, right? We're still working, but your older population, I'm not calling you old, so don't come after me yet, but our geriatric population is what puts money back into our community. Types of disabilities. The Aging Coalition did 8 standards. Number 1 was accessibility, building space, indoor and outdoor. 22% of people age of 65 and older have a mobility-related disability. Cane, walker, power wheelchair, scooter. You guys all go to the Apple Festival? My kids are constantly pointing out if I did all those wheelchairs, like they're everywhere. My kids are aware of accessibility issues, but are you? Okay, so I'm not gonna sit here all day. We know there's an issue. Go to the Western North Carolina accessibility page. What I am proposing, a couple things. We need to bring awareness to the community. I'm not asking you guys to spend money. I'm asking us to have a coalition. The aging projects that I sit on the board, the Henderson County Aging Coalition, there's multiple that have all said, please let me know how tonight goes. Please let us know how we can support these endeavors. We need increased access to bathrooms and indoor space. I was in a bathroom today in a downtown place that is not accessible. They think it's accessible because the bathroom says handicap accessible. If you are in a power wheelchair 24 inches longer, then wider the base than 24 inches, you're not getting in that bathroom. We need to be aware of this. I'm not asking them to make arrangements, but maybe their patron next door has a bigger bathroom and we can communicate and say, hey, you can't use this bathroom, but you can use the one next door. Increase downtown accessibility and make it more age-friendly. Thank you, Lindsay, for giving me some information, because some of this I didn't know. I did not realize that there were policies in place that thing called COVID happened, we've got a little lax. We can all agree in everything we do. Let's go back to the pre-COVID rules. Let's bring back those rules. 15 feet means 15 feet. I ate downtown tonight. There was not 15 feet between my table and the door. And redefining what accessibility is. Accessibility is for all of us. So what I'm proposing, you guys to back a task force. I'm not asking for you to spend money. I'm not asking for the guys who are doing the tax things to start changing their budget, but we need to bring education, whether through awareness, social media, pamphlets, and bring awareness. The nefarious comments on Facebook are because of lack of awareness and education. It's not people trying to be hateful, right? It's just unknown. Your child driving down the road is so ridiculous, but to that person, they thought it was just a way to solve the problem. And then parking closures. I know closing downtown Main Street is a huge argument. I am not going to be to tell you to do or not to do. But when we close downtown, we take away accessible parking, so we need to be aware of that. If we close downtown, can we have a designated spot for accessible parking? Because the Azalea parking lot, I don't know what that grade is, 30-degree grade. If you're a mobility-related disability, you cannot walk up that grade. And if I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong. But we got to think about those things. Again, I am not here to say yes or no, close down downtown. I'm just saying, can we bring some awareness? Because those people deserve to use downtown. Thank you. Hopefully that was quick and giving you a ton of information. Yes?
Have you seen the designs for our new parking deck?
Yes. And if you ask me specifically my thoughts, I don't know. They've been sent to me because people always ask, what do you think of this? What do you think of that?
My point there is, I'm pretty sure that if there's an elevator on every floor.
Perfect.
As far as accessibility.
Wonderful.
It can never be closed.
Perfect.
I think we're at least partially meeting that last meeting.
You are, and you're meeting it, and please don't think I'm at all degrading any of your work. Please don't think that. Awareness is super important, and the awareness came from more the community, not what you guys aren't doing. Like I said, Facebook always solves all the world problems, right? Yeah. I appreciate all you're doing, but I know this is a further conversation. We can continue to have it, but I would love a task force, and there's other agencies in town that want to do this. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Madam Mayor, can I ask a question before we move on? Which is, so we always have committees. Are we allowed to make a task force? And does it fall within the other official committee things? I'm just asking that because.
Well, we do have a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee already, and
Disability should be.
Good point.
And so
There we go. That would
inclusion
fall
is
within that.
actually an inclusive topic.
Yes.
So it's not just for, racial disparities. It's for inclusiveness for our mobility challenged people, blind folks. Like, we should be including them in those boards already.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. All right, thank you. Next, electric vehicle infrastructure discussion.
I will try and be brief. Thank you for allowing us to present our proposal to you today. My name is Will Garvey. I'm representing the ESB. We are here with a proposal to support the installation of electric vehicle charging infrastructure in Hendersonville. I guess I'm in charge of this. To start things off, a bit of technical background. Electric Vehicle Supply Equipment, or EVSE, is a formal building code term that applies to the installation of the infrastructure necessary to support electric vehicle charging. EV capable is the most basic approach and includes installation of the raceway, usually steel or PVC conduit, to a likely future destination for charging equipment. It also includes a dedicated circuit at the electrical panel for future use. EV ready is basically the same approach, but with wire pulled in the conduit and a live 240-volt charging outlet at the terminus. EV installed is the same approach with the exception that a working commercial EV charging station is installed at the terminus. This is the situation with the EV chargers in city parking lots. There are 3 charging levels for EV supply equipment. The first, level 1, is simply a 120-volt outlet such as where one might plug in a lamp. This approach is very basic, provides minimal charging speed, and is not part of the ESB recommendation. The second level is level 2 charging, which is usually a commercial EV charger that provides medium charging speed. It is the most common home or work charging approach and can fully replenish an EV battery in generally 5 to 8 hours, the equivalent of overnight or a work day, and is the current framework used in the city parking lots. Level 3, or DC fast charging, is high voltage, high speed, and is commonly found at commercial EV stations such as Tesla and Electrify America superchargers. The ESB recommendation would be for the installation of level 2 charging infrastructure. As you will recall, maybe, in December of last year, the ESB prepared a draft sustainability plan that suggested that EVSE be required at all new development. At that time, it was unclear whether such an approach was feasible. After researching implementation in other cities, we believe it is now appropriate to promote the concept in Hendersonville with a small adjustment. The ESB is now recommending that the City Council adopt a resolution that will promote, not require, electric vehicle supply equipment at new development in Hendersonville. The resolution would also require EVSE at new and renovated city construction to support future city use of EVs. We believe this approach supports your continuing commitment to sustainability while providing flexibility to the development community and preparing city public works for future electrification opportunities. So why now? Why are we coming to you with this idea now? Well, EVs are becoming more common. Automakers are increasing EV production. Some will fully phase out the use of internal combustion engines by 2035, far sooner than the life of residential development now under construction. Over 80% of EV owners charge their vehicles at home or work, and this approach will future-proof planned development in a cost-effective way. In addition, and probably the biggest driver, significant funding has been allocated for the construction of high-speed EV charging infrastructure across North Carolina. This in turn will help address the range anxiety that causes some new car buyers to avoid EVs. These funds are likely to be managed similar to the VW settlement funds, which were available to a wide range of applicants, including private sector developers. And for the city, EVs are a perfect choice for future fleet replacement due to mileage use and ability to recharge overnight. And this is a graph of EV registrations in North Carolina. You can sort of see the trend there. As of August, there's new numbers out, and as of August of this year, Henderson County had approximately 295 EVs, full EVs. This is an eye chart, but we'll leave it up for a while. When we prepared the draft sustainability recommendations, you requested that we look at other examples where the recommendations might have been pursued. In North Carolina, the city of Charlotte recently adopted a unified development ordinance that, when implemented, will require EV charging stations as part of new construction. We understand that other cities in North Carolina are also considering this approach. There are other cities in the Southeast that have already implemented EVSE requirements. Clearly, Hendersonville is not Orlando or Atlanta, and we show you this only to show that the concept is not necessarily a new one, and that the approach of using certain percentage of parking space to guide design is fairly consistent.
Before you go to the next slide, can I ask you the very bottom bullet?
Yep.
All new single-family homes be equipped with infrastructure to accommodate. What exactly does that mean?
That's what, I mean, if you build a new home in Atlanta.
A plug that would work for an electric car, that's what I'm asking.
Conduit wiring and electrical capacity. So that's that, when we go back to EV capable.
Right.
So it's like, in the ground is a trench. In that trench is a conduit. At the breaker box, there is a dedicated circuit for EV.
Gotcha, okay.
So that's all Atlanta requires. They don't require you to pull the wire. They don't require you to put a plug. But 5 years from now, if you or whoever lives there decides to install that EV out in the yard, or install that EV charger out in the yard,
Right, that's the EV.
they don't have to dig up the ground.
And that's what that's what the EV capable one that you.
Yes, sir.
Or that's what that means?
Yep, that's what that means.
All right, thank you.
And we're sort of agnostic about that. All that does is enable, in the future, someone to come in and say, can we put a charger here? And sure, we can do that. We don't have to dig up the asphalt. And
Okay.
the numbers there are it costs about a third less to do it while the construction is ongoing rather than to retrofit.
Thank you.
So, since the resolution would take the form of a recommendation, we have been asked what might be provided as incentives for the development community to pursue EVSE installation. We would look to the Planning Division for the best approach, but other cities have taken the approach of providing incentives such as expedited permitting, adjustments to density, parking, and landscape requirements to promote EV infrastructure. Finally, if you approve a resolution supporting EVSE implementation on a voluntary basis, the ESB will work with city staff to prepare materials that can be provided to the development community. Further, we are committed to assisting the city in researching the installation of infrastructure necessary to capitalize on the benefits of electric vehicles to the city's fleet, including preparing draft grant applications. That's it for me. Thank you for the opportunity. Questions?
We get to ask questions?
I'm sorry?
Okay.
Sure.
So one of the questions I have is, like currently, in the, which lot has the electric charging station in it now?
Azalea and
I'm thinking of Dogwood, okay.
And Dogwood.
Dogwood, if you're parked there, it's sort of assumed that you've come to downtown to do something, you've parked there, you're charging your car while you're there, you're probably not going to be there all day.
That's correct.
One of my questions is, if it, for example, is in the parking lot of a business, I guess, is there any thought to how you basically make people move so they don't leave their car plugged in all day, so other people can use that? Is there any thought to how that goes?
Yeah, most of these things are insanely networked. So when you arrive at the charger, you plug into the charger, your phone says, "Hi, welcome, you're plugged into the charger." If you charge to a full capacity, once you've charged to full capacity, one, your phone tells you you're done, you need to come back and move your car. And two, the networking capabilities are such now that if you overstay your welcome, you get charged, or they have the capability to charge you.
Okay, yeah.
Very common with DC fast chargers, like a Tesla supercharger. It's $5 for every minute.
Ooh.
Once you're full.
Hmm.
You get a 5-minute grace period, but once your phone buzzes, you better get back to your car, or you pay an extra $5, which is,
Kind of destroying the purpose, because then you're basically paying for, like paying for gas.
No, the networking capability is quite remarkable. It's not like a gas pump where you sort of
Right.
plug in and walk away. There's a lot of things that are ongoing during the process.
That leads to my next question, which is gas pump, I walk up, I pay for my gas, I pump my gas, I leave. And all these, the infrastructure that you're discussing, who is paying for the electricity that the person is using to charge their car?
It depends, again, with networking, and in the state of North Carolina, it is, there was a change to the legislation to allow other entities other than a utility to sell energy. So if I have a public charging station, if I have a level 2 charger in my yard, I can actually charge people for that electricity.
And is that kind of what the understanding would be if we were to implement, not were, but as the increase in these stations continue, that if, when you hook up to it, you have to pay something to get that charge?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Particularly if you looked at it in a multifamily dwelling, if you had 200 apartments and you had 10 spaces, those 10 spaces could be leased differently to those people who would use them. Again, because of the networking capability, if I have an electric vehicle and I pull up to it, I can't charge there unless I'm already cleared through that network to charge. So it's quite a bit different than sort of gas fueling.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
There are several different networks. ChargePoint is one of the big ones, and a couple of others, and you have to have them in your phone with your credit card there in order to use those chargers. You get charged.
Gotcha, okay.
Right. Every now and then you run across one that's free, but the value, a lot of hotels, for example, if you stay at the hotel, it's free to charge. A lot of hotels, even if you're not staying at the hotel, they don't mind if you charge because the value of that charge is, under $5 usually, depending on how long you stay. So it's a business proposition usually for the business owner or for the developer. That's one of the things that we've seen in the research is developers see this as a bonus because they can say to their future renters, well, if and when you have an electric vehicle, we have the capacity for you to be able to charge. Anything else? Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
I will add as a side note that it is illegal in the state of North Carolina to have charging stations at the rest areas because you are not allowed to charge for anything other than vending at a rest area. And so they're currently, I think, in discussions with General Assembly on seeing if that can be altered or changed, because right now they can't charge for anything other than vending at a rest area in North Carolina. So we've had to talk about this a lot at the TAC meeting. We've got strong advocates for EV charging at rest areas in North Carolina, and that's one of the things that we're kind of actively discussing. So.
Okay, thank you. All right, next, recommendation for 2045 Comprehensive Plan Consultant.
Yes, thank you. The Community Development Department, under the leadership of Lou Holloway, released a RFP for the 2045 comp plan in early August. At the deadline, at the end of August, we received 5 proposals from the firms listed there on the screen. Staff created an internal review team that used a scoring sheet like the one that's shown on the screen and reviewed each of those 5 proposals, and they graded them based on the criteria that was outlined in the RFP. We then compiled those scores, and as you can see at the bottom of the screen, the scores were very close. The internal review team convened to discuss our thought processes behind how we scored and ranked each of the teams we reviewed. I'll mention that there was 2 planning staff, downtown staff, public works, and engineering all represented on that internal review team. And then we also got some feedback from Jonathan Guy with Kimley Horn. So during that review, Lou also reviewed the applications. He reviewed them separately, and he noted something that really showed up and had an impact on the scoring, which was that Bolton and Mink specifically addressed in their cover letter the goals of the RFP and their belief that although they had priced the ad alternates, which you may be familiar with it, the city asked for a budget and a proposal to do the comprehensive plan, along with a proposal and a cost for doing a zoning code rewrite, a downtown master plan, and a comprehensive transportation plan. And so in their cover letter, they stated they believed that they could address the goals of the RFP within the budget. So this was a shortcoming in their ranking. If you were to go back and reevaluate the ranking and give them an average score under their budget, they got hit pretty hard in their pricing. If you gave them an average score, they jump out of last place. And if you gave them an above average score, they easily jump into first place. And so that really shows what an impact their pricing in their proposal had on the evaluation and how they ranked. And so with that, we decided to include them in the interviews along with 2 other firms, Housel Levine and TSW. And the three proposals from that short list, that interview list of candidates were then given to the members of the Long-Range Planning Committee of the Planning Board. So they only had to review those three proposals, and we convened them and got their feedback on those three proposals. And then we got a representative, Jim Robertson, the chairman of the Planning Board, to sit in on the interviews that we conducted with these three firms. We did all three interviews in one day, and at the end, late afternoon, after a long day of interviews, we debriefed as a team. In fact, Jim was asked first what his thoughts were, and some of the summary of the thoughts are on the screen. And he said, hands down, Bolton and Mink did an incredible job with their interview. They responded to all the various needs that we would be looking for as a consultant for our comprehensive plan, and just stood out above the rest. And as we went around the room, everyone had the same conclusion. Housel Levine was a close second, but there was a clear consensus amongst the entire internal review team and our long-range planning board representative that Bolton and Mink really stood out. And so with that, we are bringing that recommendation, we brought that recommendation to the planning board. They also supported that position, and then we're asking you as well to support Bolton and Mink as the lead consultants for the comprehensive plan. We did reach out to the references they had, all positive things, had a really great conversation with Cheryl Myers from Charlotte, and Alicia Osborne. I had a great Zoom call with her, and positive things to say about them. So with that, I'll open it up for any discussion, and I believe there is a resolution and a motion on your cover sheet for that.
Any questions?
When would they get started?
So the next step would be, this would authorize city staff, city manager to enter into negotiations on a contract. So we'd have to, what exactly are they going to do? How many meetings are they going to, how many community meetings, how many trips to the city? What are the deliverables? When will they be due? All those fun details.
Gotcha.
And then I would anticipate that's going to take, over through the end of the year, and we'd be looking at first quarter next year with some type of kickoff, and people from the public should be hearing things in early 2023.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any discussion or a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move the City Council adopt a resolution directing the city manager to negotiate a contract with Cole Yenst and Stone Bolton Mink, Inc. to provide professional community planning services for the 2045 Comprehensive Plan project, based on their review as the most qualified firm to perform the work, and authorize the city manager to negotiate with the next most qualified firm based on the presented rankings if the negotiations fail.
Is there any discussion? Not? Those in favor of the resolution for comprehensive plan consultants, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it, and you can move ahead with that one. Thank you. Next, ordinance amending Chapter 20, Article 2, noise.
Mayor Vogt, members of City Council, I'm going to ask Allison and Brandy to please unmute Rodney Gillum on Zoom, and ask that Lou and the chief jump out here because there may be questions. Rodney, as you know, was our intern, but Rodney is in the process of retiring from the military and has gone back to his military post for his last several weeks of military duty. But he worked on this with Chief Mahan and Lou, and so I'm giving him the opportunity to introduce the item and discuss the presentation on the noise ordinance, but I know there may be questions for Lou and the chief.
Rodney, we've asked you to unmute.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, distinguished council member, employees, and honored guests. Let me begin by first offering City Manager John Connett and all the staff and employees from the City of Hendersonville a very heartfelt thank you for the incredible and beneficial experience of working this fellowship/internship in my last 5 months in the military. And as I prepare to transition from serving in the armed forces to serving in some capacity in local government, I want to say that the pride, poise, and professionalism that I witnessed firsthand of the employees of this city, it speaks volumes about this city, its leadership, and its employees. And on behalf of the U.S. Army and the Veterans Local Government Management Fellowship, and on behalf of military veterans, thank you all for your support of veterans working to find our place in civilian society. The last project, as City Manager said, that he gave me was to work with the committee to update and strengthen an older city noise ordinance that we recommend amending. And the committee, as John said, consisted of our city attorney, Angela Meeker, Chief of Police Blair Monahan, Chief City Planner Lou Holloway, and myself. The city's ordinance update recommendation was updated by studying the noise ordinances of other like North Carolina cities, such as Wilmington, Boone, Hickory, and Asheville, and incorporating some of their wording in some places to help update our own ordinance. If we begin at just at the very beginning, 2031 B, we updated that wording there. If you compare it with our initial wording, with how it was worded in Boone's noise ordinance in their chapter 82. In the next section, 2032, terminology and methodology, there was, in the initial document, we dropped wording such as, quote, a reasonable person or unreasonably loud noise, usual place of abode, moderate, fair, sensible. All of these are subjective terms that we chose to drop and make it much more concise. On section 3 of that same area, we utilized Wilmington's definitions, and also where it says nighttime, it defines it now from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., wherein before it was just labeled nighttime. The subsection in 2033, section 2 was dropped because two things. It's subjective in nature. On motor vehicles, question asked, what if a group of motorcyclists were driving through Main Street, not doing anything illegal with either stock or legally upgraded tailpipes? It would still be loud for a season, but they would not necessarily be breaking the law. It's also redundant in that it's already addressed in Ordinance 105-164-3 and in 20-401. The section on that same area, number 7, was added on burnouts. It was added because a measure of enforcement. It's an issue that the PD is constantly addressing. So it was added into this updated form. In the same section and in 9, this section was dropped because it was redundant. The section 2035, that the beginning paragraph is all taken out as it was from the original. The chart below is derived from the city of Wilmington's noise ordinance, and it's found to be much clearer than the paragraph that Hendersonville had that was stricken above. Next is 2038 on the violations. I would just point out in numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, there's a fairly substantial increase in the consequence of violations. It gives the police department the ability to enforce the ordinance more effectively from especially repeat offenders. So what was there in number 1 as the first violation was $100. It's been raised to $250. The second violation was $200. It's been raised to $500. The third violation was $300. It's been raised to $750. And the fourth or subsequent violation was $500 per offense, and now it's $1,000 per offense. This was a recommendation of the police department. It gives them more ability to deal with repeat offenders. In the following sections, let me see, of 5, 6, and 7, or excuse me, 4C, D, E, and F, that was all in addition. 12-month rolling period of those with repeated violations, beginning January 7th and going on through January 8th next year. If they, in section D, any person who willfully fails to comply with the director of law enforcement officers comes into compliance with this article will be subject to a civil penalty of $1,000 violation of this subsection, and it will constitute a separate violation of this article. And then in section F, in the very last portion of the sentence, it says it shall constitute a class 3 misdemeanor and shall subject the offender to a fine of not less than $50 on no more than 500 plus court costs. Those are all new. Also in section F, we gathered that from Wilmington's noise ordinance, Article 2, Section 6-32 of their ordinance. And then lastly, in Section 2039B, this section was drawn from the city of Asheville's noise ordinance, Section 10-92 of Asheville's noise ordinance. That's all I have, unless anyone else on the committee, our attorney, chief of police, or city planner have anything additional to add. And if not, we await questions from the council.
Thank you, Rodney. I would like for Chief Mahan or Madam City Attorney to address the changes in how we are measuring levels of noise, and as it relates to the noise meters, as well as the officer discretion piece is the best way I could say. So, thanks, Chief.
So, Council, you'll see in this ordinance, the proposed ordinance here, that we're sort of offering two different ways that we could determine whether there was a violation. One would be by a noise meter, which we don't currently have, was something that we would need to purchase, and I've found them as cheap as $20 on Amazon, and I think to do it right, we would need to spend probably about $600 to get a calibration device that goes along with the sound meter. We're also, there can be violations based on an officer's opinion, but that is sort of spelled out into the ordinance, so it's more clear. The officer can't just walk up and say, "Oh, it sounds loud to me," and issue a violation, they would have to look at the factors that are listed in the ordinance, volume of the noise, intensity of the noise, those things that are spelled out in the ordinance. But we took a lesson from some of the other cities that we looked at, and that ability to enforce violations was in those, and we felt that it was more clear in talking to Angie. It was a better way for us to be able to enforce those violations. And Angie, correct me if I'm wrong, measuring the noise, if we were using the noise meter to measure, would be from the edge of the property from where the complaint is being filed. So not, if I'm complaining on a noise coming from a nearby business, let's say, you would take the reading from the edge of my property, not necessarily the edge of the property where the noise is, because that would obviously be louder. Where I'm at as the complainant would be where the violation would occur. So officers would take that reading from that edge of that property.
Just tell me when you're ready for questions.
Well, I'll let Angie cut in.
So, I don't want to take the credit away from these guys, because they're the ones that read the Wilmington and the Asheville and all those ordinances and put it again. And I just kind of came in at the end, but, I think the goal here is to give the officers some more tools to have in their tool belt to be able to go and address the situations on the spot. I feel like that, and I'm not trying to speak for the chief, but it gives them some leverage and tools that if people don't come into compliance, then they can issue the citations, or if somebody really is willful and really is creating a disturbance, then they could be subject to arrest. But I think the goal here is to bring about compliance, to bring the noise down, to bring peaceful enjoyment of everybody in the community, not to go out and start issuing citations and arresting people. Is that a fair statement?
I think it is, and that was sort of the statement of policy in the beginning of the ordinance, so that really, I think, spells out the spirit of the ordinance, that is to promote a vibrant community, but to recognize that people have a right to not being subject to, loud noise and those sorts of things. So I think that helps us with our enforcement. The ordinance that we have currently right now from staff, it's very confusing, it's hard to enforce. And so this, I think, is much clearer, and if you agree with that statement of policy, that really sets the tone of what you want from a noise ordinance perspective.
If you remember when we started, part of this was open, part of our ordinance prohibited opening doors in the downtown area, and there was some question, there were some businesses that may not have any noise going on, but they couldn't, after a certain time, have music with the doors open. So this took the whole open and closed doors out of it and based it strictly on sound versus, the more subjective, you got to close your door, and if it's in the middle of summer, they don't have air conditioning and those kind of things.
So one thing that we did change was it used to have barking dogs in here. Barking dogs is in the animal control ordinance, and that is being worked on through the Animal Services Advisory Committee. And so I think they're going to come back with some recommendations on noise from a barking dog. That's going to be a nuisance that's addressed under that ordinance rather than the quote noise ordinance.
Thanks, Chief. Thanks.
Okay, Councilmember Smith.
Okay. I'm patient. That's all good. So, I have a question. You just talked about where you take the reading for the decibel level. And my question to you is, so let's say that I am a pedestrian and I am walking through downtown and I am near, I chose Akawaha Brewing because they would be potentially having music outside, or at least doors open. And I'm like, man, that's loud. Do I have the authority, the standing to say to the police, that music is too loud and they need to turn that music down? I don't live there. I don't own a place across the street. I'm just a pedestrian on Main Street. First of all, is that allowed? Can anyone file a complaint that's on the street that says the music is or the noise is too loud?
Sure. And so the way it's written is that you would take the measurement from an adjoining property, any adjoining property. In other words, if the sound is escaping from your property, if it's too loud when it's escaping from your property, if the measurement, and it can be anywhere off of your property.
Probably be in the
really.
street in that case.
And that
It
one,
could be
you'd
in the
be
street.
literally in the street.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's off of your property and it's exceeding the noise level, you're violating it.
Okay, so then a person could, on the street, say, this music is too loud, or call the police department, and they would take a measurement right there outside on the street, and if it is the 75, whatever the time of the day is, I guess that also matters as well, but that's where a person could do that.
Yes, and I would expect the officer to go and take the measurement and go to the premises and say, we need you to turn it down.
Or you're within the decibel level, so
Or
sorry, but there's no complaint here.
Yeah, right. So we need you to turn it down.
Okay, so then it doesn't have to be a landowner,
No.
tenant, anything like that, anybody really anywhere who is not, you're obviously off the property, that's where you're taking your decibel reading, anybody can do that,
Yes, sir.
okay?
Somebody eating dinner around the corner. I mean,
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
If it was a bar that had a band, but it was within the 11 PM hours, then that would not fall under this criteria though, right?
No. So there's a chart. And
That's my next question, when I get to the.
There's a chart, and I have no idea where it came from, but there is a chart, and so I can't tell you 65 decibels versus 75 decibels, the difference, but it's louder, it's allowed to be louder before nighttime, and after, so in the downtown, 7 AM to midnight, 75 decibels, midnight to 7 AM is 65 decibels. So there's a 10 decibel difference as far as what the limitation is. So it's not prohibited, there's just a different,
Right.
yeah.
So what is
Just
Can
a quick interjection is we found this chart off of the city of Wilmington.
Okay, you may have my question in mind.
So if Laser Lover was playing at Okawaha, do we know what decibel their music is to the street? Is it 85 or 76?
I'm not sure who that band is. I guess I'm not hip enough. But it's really based on, if they're turned to 11, it's probably, over the decibel reading. So again, it really depends on the volume of the music and whether or not that is a nuisance to the neighborhood. And so again, what we're trying to do is promote people to have a vibrant community. Is on that table that you saw, the residential noise limits are much lower, the times are shorter, so it wouldn't be appropriate in your neighborhood at midnight, right? So we reduce those times, but again, if there's no complaint, there's not an issue, but if there's a complaint and we take a reading, we would always try to encourage that the violation stops, so the music is turned down and is no longer
Close the doors.
close the doors, or,
Yeah.
we'd rather have compliance than issue multiple citations.
But with this, even if the door is shut
Yeah.
and you're above the decibel level,
Yeah, it's-
you're in violation.
That's correct.
My turn? Okay, so that chart right there, is there as I read this, there's no definition of what downtown means. And there's no definition of what commercial industrial means. Is that correct? So I would say, to me, I'm sorry, the legal side, that's a problem.
I don't disagree. So it's tied to zoning. It's
Right,
tied
but
to
it
zoning.
seems to me that part of this should say the downtown is these zoning districts, or some physical definition,
Don't
because,
disagree with that at all.
because if I'm thinking just right now, culturally, I don't think of Seventh Avenue as downtown, I think of Main Street as downtown. So then what is Seventh Avenue? Well, part of it is an industrial district, but another part of it is not. So I guess, to me, there needs to be further definition of what these areas are. Especially if I'm a police officer, I'm figuring out which one applies. Especially if there's a residential area right across the street. That's another challenge here, because I think what it means is if the business is in downtown, they get to do this. But if across the street, which I don't trying to think where that might be, but if that were to happen, across the street is residential, right? What reading applies, I guess? So, to me, when I say weakness, I don't mean it's bad ordinance. I'm saying it's something that needs to be defined, what downtown, I think everybody probably understands what residential means, but maybe define that as well, and what commercial and industrial mean, what they are referring to. Because we don't have a definition, do we?
Well, like dry falls, what would they be considered? Are they residential or are they commercial?
Is that the one on Canuga?
Because that's
Lou?
There's a house right behind it.
So, you know, the simplest would be that your commercial zoning and industrial zoning districts would all fall under the downtown or commercial and industrial, and your residential zoning districts would fall under residential. So you have an R6 through R40 residential, exclusively residential zoning districts. And then because the standards between commercial, industrial, and downtown aren't different, you could apply that to all of your commercial, industrial, and downtown zoning districts. If you wanted to, you know, further feather out what the standards were, then there might need to be a broader conversation. But defining residential as R6 through R40 would probably be the simplest. Now, it does, you know, we do have mixed-use districts. Make my own statement more complicated, but.
We looked at a big one tonight on 7th Avenue.
Right. So, well, and so, yes, you will have some of that. If you wanted to peel out your mixed-use districts, it'll get a little more complicated.
No, I think where I'm coming from.
Your pointt's right. You're down.
Yeah, no, it.
Well,
it's
so I'm
not
like,
that
this
it's-
gentleman over here is our police officer, gets called, and he's trying to figure out, well, okay, you know, starting at 10 o'clock, which of these applies, 65 or 75? Am I in a 75 zone or a 65 zone? I think, I'm just talking about being fair to the police officers, trying to figure out, okay, I'm looking at my decimal meter here, what number applies in this location?
Yeah, so what I would say is, you know, so we do have complaints where we have nightclubs or establishments that play music, and we get complaints from residential areas. And so the violation, you know, if I'm complaining at my house, but the business I'm complaining on is in a commercial district or in what we would define as downtown, they can play until midnight, right? So I can't apply the residential standard to that business. I can tell the homeowner, look, they're allowed to play music, and, you know, as long as it still isn't, you know, over the threshold that's in that chart, that's how we would apply that. So residential would be if you're having a party at your house, I live next door to you, the violation would be in the residential area, or the standards by which you would be,
Right.
you know, determine if there was a violation.
You'd be invited to my party, so you would be.
Well, I
there.
appreciate that, thank you.
But my question though, there is, once again, talking about where what is the downtown? The example she said is a good example. I don't think Dry Falls would be downtown, correct? So it wouldn't apply to this. So that means they're under the 65 decibel limitation.
Or they would be under the commercial.
Okay, so does commercial then just mean any business? So I guess that's my question. Does commercial mean any business gets to, and if that's the case, that is a can of worms, if any business gets to use the 75 decibel level.
Yeah, and I think it's worth it, us trying to define that, because I do want it to be more enforceable. I think what we've proposed to you here is far more clear and enforceable from a police department standpoint than what we currently have. But I recognize and noise is one of the, it's a very difficult, it's almost like the animal ordinances. It's very difficult. There's a lot of different opinions. And I would rather that we not write a single citation for noise. We just have people comply, and generally that's what we find. We have issued some citations under the current ordinance, but most of the time we ask people to turn the music down, and they do, and the issue goes away, and we move on. But I think it is worth specifying here, because I can see, I'm not real sure what I think 7th Avenue I think is downtown to me, but maybe.
But yeah, I mean, between the commercial and the downtown, that if it's a business, well, they're all over town. you know? So, I mean, I guess, for example, if the Triangle stop across the street from a neighborhood, that would be commercial. If they want to blast I say blast, if they are playing whatever they're playing and it's 75 decibels versus right across the street, it's supposed to be 65 decibels. I don't know, to me, I don't think that's the spirit of this. I think the spirit is to allow, you know, outdoor music downtown, and what we call downtown. I just think there's a definition required for a police officer who's having to address this.
Well, and I will point out that on this chart, the downtown and the commercial decibels are the same and the times
Oh, yeah.
are the same. So we probably could make that a little more succinct and either have a residential and all other commercial, industrial, all, you know.
Right, and I also understand that, you know, one of the challenges, so if I'm sitting on my backyard and I'm hearing one of those bands on 7th Avenue at night, blasting it, the real question is, in my yard, if you hold up the decibel meter, does it hit, I'll say 65 or 75, whatever. It's not that I hear music off in the distance, because that's what's enforceable.
Right.
Is when you hold it up and you hear it, does it hit the magic number?
But we're also proposing that officers could cite someone or have a violation based on, without having the sound meter, based on other factors that are listed in the ordinance. So while it may not, it could still create a nuisance. Maybe there's multiple residents that are complaining that the music's too loud, you know, because we typically get them across Four Seasons. You know, the residents that live across Four Seasons are being impacted by a business, and of course, we stand there. It's never going to probably reach the decibel level, but it may, for some reason, still be a violation. And we would use other factors to either encourage compliance or cite someone, but.
The other thing is, have any of you actually listened to what 75 decibels sounds like?
No, but I really want to.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Because I went
I'm
to
sure
Main
I
Street
listened to
today,
like
and I took my
135.
little speaker,
Yeah.
and I set it outside a 3-chop, and I turned it on and put it on, I read, I could only get this to 75 decibels, okay, so sorry. And just heard what it sounded like. And it's actually, it's not that loud. What I find interesting about this level is, it's you get to 75 decibels very quickly. So it is not like, if you're out beating on a snare and you got the bass going, you're gonna exceed 75 immediately. Okay, because if I can hit it on my little Bluetooth speaker. So I think one of the things about that is 75, honestly, is a pretty low decimal level. Like if you're thinking about opening up the garage door so that the band can play, I don't think you're gonna be able to do that and be under 75 decibels. That's my impression, especially if you have an amped up, you know, electric guitar going or something like that, or Laser Lover.
See?
You know, having that lead singer screaming, you know. So it's not that loud, quite honestly. I have one other question. I don't know who I should direct this to, and that is, so originally when the thing came out this summer, there was a discussion of changing standards like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or something like that. However, this applies 24/7 every day of the week.
As proposed, yes.
As proposed. So the midnight level is not just on the weekends, it's any day of the week, or I should say the midnight time.
That's correct.
Yeah, and so as I emailed council this morning, my opinion is a better time is 11 because it's any time. It's not just the weekends. And if we want to make something separate for the weekends, we should put something in the ordinance that says till 12 on certain nights. But, you know, Tuesday night, if someone's making a lot of noise, I just don't think people tend to expect that. I think we understand, certainly Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, that's usually when bands play and are loud. I don't think people expect that Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So, you know, so that was why my recommendation was for 11, because it's now every day of the week. And then maybe we should think about, if we want to make a distinction for Friday and Saturday nights, I'll just throw that out. I do think that would be fairly enforceable if you know on Friday night or Saturday night, the time is a later time.
You'll get no opposition from the police department to make it 11 p.m. I mean, I think we sort of arm wrestled about.
You probably won that arm wrestle, though, didn't you?
Well, I think we compromised on that midnight as an every day. But whether, the council agrees that we move it to 11, 7 days a week, or we carve out some exceptions, I think what we were trying to do is make sure that we can continue the businesses and, particularly in downtown and 7th Avenue in some places, and like Dry Falls around Busy Bend could, have a business, a vibrant business, but still respect that other people that live nearby aren't subjected to laser lover for,
I wouldn't say subjected to. I mean, it's good stuff.
You should get
It's
royalty
good stuff.
points. Just so you know.
I will
Royalties.
YouTube that tonight. No.
Tell them Jen Hensley gets royalties.
I should
Yeah.
note something about that. We did arm wrestle. Now I'm going to a physical therapist for my shoulder. Don't arm wrestle the chief. Downtown, the committee actually voted for an even later time than midnight. So just so you're aware, they wanted it to go until 2 in the original discussion.
Oh, yeah.
So midnight was a pullback from there. Of course, you do have downtown and commercial and industrial. If we did define that further, there's an opportunity there to have your 11 perhaps. But there was a robust discussion about downtown entertainment district, music, that sort of thing. And the midnight was, it's also representative of when a lot of those places do close. There's a couple that do stay open later, but the vast majority of the businesses actually close at 10 during the week and then run until midnight during the weekends. So.
Well, it seems to me it would be fair that in the MSD, specifically 7th Avenue and Main Street, to find those, that to me is logical. They're midnight, at least maybe Friday and Saturday. Because I think that is where you would go for entertainment venues like that. That's what they would be. Dry Falls is not in that though, so I don't have an answer for that situation.
So
Those are my
a
questions.
couple other things I just want to let you know that are in here. Anybody that gets a special event permit is going to be exempt. So you're going to need to specify it in your special event permit that you approve. Okay? So like for Apple Festival, I guess they get a special event permit. So it'll be exempt. And so you'll need to think about that now when you grant special events permits. And the old ordinance, or the ordinance we have now, allows the chief to just grant permits for people to exceed the noise. And so it's like there was no guidance, no anything in there about when it was so I was like, and chief was like, he doesn't want that responsibility to just decide, oh, you get a permit to exceed the noise ordinance, but you don't. So that's not in here any longer, just an arbitrary exception permit. So instead, they came up with a list of things that should just be exempt. And so like,
Well, Rhythm and Brews is a great example. I mean, obviously, you're violating this ordinance when you're.
right, exactly, right. And so,
So it says that they are automatically exempt, or they may be exempt?
they are exempt, because the idea would be that you will, because there's not any limitation on them now.
Right.
Let's be real, right? And so that just won't change, it won't change. And so it'll be a special, I think that when you grant the special events permit, that's when you'll need to say, okay, for this event, it can, I think you can specify that in the special events permit.
And that means even if in the officer's opinion, so the reasonableness standard, they're exempt from that as well.
It's what's in here, yes.
I missed that one, I'm reading it.
And for the record, like currently right now, I have not issued an exemption to the noise permit because I didn't think that it was fair to subject everybody else to someone else's loud music. I just tell them they need to play their music at a reasonable level. So I do appreciate that not being as part of this ordinance because I have made a few people mad at me.
If you look at 20-37, it now says reserve, that's what all the red strike-throughs are. So we'll take a look at it, and I hate to admit that I had the same thoughts when I was looking at it this afternoon before the meeting, but I did, so I'm glad you brought it up. Councilmember Smith.
Commissioner sounds good, let's go with it.
Commissioner is, in Huntersville, they were commissioners, and so sometimes I still lapse, I guess.
Commissioner Gordon on Batman.
But it's a very good point, and I also think it's a good point that it wouldn't be a bad idea to buy a noise meter and have some demonstrations in here to see, so you know what the levels are.
Field trips.
Yeah.
Or field trip.
Is laser
Yeah,
playing?
because I thought, I'm surprised to hear that 75 decibels isn't that loud, because I thought a vacuum cleaner is only like 30 or 40, when something. Anyway, it would be nice to have some demonstrations of.
It is not hard to hit 75.
Okay.
I'll express my age with the city at this point, because when we last brought up the noise ordinance, we did do a demonstration. And we did a.
Is that the one where we went in the building?
Yeah, when we went in the building.
They were blasting that music?
And we put a speaker right against the wall in the next door apartment and blasted it as loud as we could and turned it up literally as much as we could and still couldn't bust through the decibel level at the time, which is why we moved more towards the officer discretion to determine when things are, based on the context, which I would really point that out. I think that's probably, and I don't want to put words in the chief's mouth here in any way, but more likely when they have a noise complaint, that's going to be the standard that they will use to get someone to turn something down and potentially, interact with someone who's causing a problem. And then if you have somebody who's doing it over and over and over again, that may be when you start breaking out those sound meters. But I know 75 decibels is, I'm interested in your little speaker actually generating 75 decibels because I understand
I just did it
pretty
at Three
loud.
Chop. I put it on, the parking lot. I put it on the front of my minivan. I turned it up, and this man was watching me.
I was going to say,
What's this guy
what do
doing?
people think about
And so I'm just moving back and forth to figure out when 75 hits, and then when it goes away, this guy's looking at me, and I'm playing, I think Will Smith Getting Jiggy with it or something like that. And yeah, it was fun.
I will say that Lou is right. I think that the reasonableness standard will be applied most often. I'll give you a quick horror story of the sound meter. So in a place I worked before, there was a wedding venue in the ETJ, and we had to take noise meter readings for weeks on end because of the complaining neighbors of the music that would be played, from a wedding venue. And so it's very challenging. We're not, I don't know, soundologists or whatever those folks are called. But, that's why I would say we would maybe want to spend some money that has a device that has a calibration component to it.
Without a doubt.
Because we didn't have that
It says
before.
that.
About how many
You did read it.
noise complaints do you get in a month?
I don't know for sure, but we definitely get several. So some, on the weekends in particular is when we get them, when I think some of the venues that we have in town have live bands that play in the back garden. So I would say on average, we get a handful of noise complaints every week, particularly from a few locations. I can't recall of one as like in a residential area where their neighbors, they're not, I think most of them are coming from, clubs, nightclubs that play music that emanates from outside of the business into the residential areas.
Do we have nightclubs here?
I think I'm not sure how, I would define them as nightclubs, yes, or.
There's another definition for you. Well, I don't know, I guess to me, these are some things
So we're waiting.
that we should get defined before we pass this ordinance. And I don't say this, I think it's great. It's way better than what we had before. So we're just almost there.
Okay.
Copy.
Any other suggestions to consider? All right. Thank you all. We will look forward to ordinance 2.0 or 2.1 or wherever we are with the next one. Thank you.
In our demonstration.
All right, discussion regarding the closing of 4th Avenue on Halloween. Ms. Hensley.
Okay, for a few years in a row now, I have been talking about the danger of trick-or-treating on 4th Avenue. And I just this year several people contacted me after Halloween with just even more concerns. Kristen Cooper was here earlier to speak a public comment and didn't know she had to sign up on a sheet. But she is a mom of 3 small girls, and she actually started an online petition, not to close down Fourth, but to make some modifications that would potentially be safer. And I know that we had some questions about what it would look like, what would we do, what about residents, and I sent her all those questions and said, you know, here are the concerns if we just completely shut down the street. Like, do you and your people have, you know, suggestions? And so some of the suggestions that are available on the online petition that I think is, I don't know, like up to 150 or something like that in a couple days, but so some of the ideas that they had were roadblocks for detours around 4th and 5th, specifically the areas of from Justice to Blythe. Signage potentially indicating no through traffic, calling for reduced speeds through these 5 blocks, and maybe a crossing guard at the intersection of 5th and Whitted. I don't know like what needs to happen exactly, but something different needs to happen than what is happening now. Right now it is like, I cringe when we're walking down 4th Avenue. It's super dark. Like there was actually a tractor trailer driving down the road this year, and you know, it's already very narrow, and despite how things were when I was a child, when we would trick or treat, was that you didn't have parents that would just drive you around. You had to actually walk yourself to trick or treat. Now there are multiple parents that drive their children from home to home, and then that's also happening at the same time that it's really dark, and there are thousands of small children running back and forth, and it's the scariest thing ever. So I don't know what needs to happen. I just would like to see if we can have some sort of a discussion to make it safer, and so that people felt comfortable with their kids out trick-or-treating. Specifically on 4th, Fifth Avenue is also, it gets pretty crazy on 5th Avenue, but I do understand that that's more of a thoroughfare. But if there's a way that we can look into it or get some recommendations from the police department on what we could do that would just make things a little safer, I think everybody would feel a little bit better. That's all.
Well, then you'd probably have to do it on my street too. I mean, I've got, my neighbor said it looked like a landing strip with all the red lights of cars going down. I probably had 175 or more kids come to my door. So I'm not sure how we can choose certain streets to do it. Because there are several different locations in town that have the same problem.
Yep.
I mean, I will say that we trick-or-treated the first couple of years in Druid Hills, and now we trick-or-treat down 4th Avenue. And 4th Avenue, because it is straight, I don't know what it is. There were literally walls of people walking in the middle of the street, and cars were still turning down the road, including a giant tractor trailer bus. I don't even know what it was, but it blows my mind that when people see walls of people walking down the middle of the street on Halloween, that they would even still drive their car. But last year, there were people that were clearly going over the speed limit while there were also children on the side of the road. And so I don't know what the solution is, because we do have other neighborhoods, but I feel like 4th Avenue, because of it being straight, it feels more unsafe to me than whereas like Druid Hills, you can't go as fast.
Yeah, and I think too, because everything is happening on Main Street, then it's just like people do their thing on Main Street and then they hoard, it's like the wall of people, I mean, that come down. You can tell when things at Main Street have kind of simmered down, because then the massive wall of people start moving down 4th Avenue. So I do think it is a very congested, dangerous situation that I just hope that we can do something different.
Then you have that guy that does that little carnival on Justice too, that attracts a lot of people.
Oh, there's a couple of houses now that have like big.
Justice just before you get to the housing authority.
Yeah, there's another carnival as well on 4th now. Maybe a bigger carnival than what is on Justice.
Terrifying.
It's like a kind of a mini haunted house in their front yard, which is fantastic, but lots of people.
Yeah, and a lot of, so my son, him and his buddies, they met in Laurel Park, and then they got a ride, and they were at, I'm assuming 4th and 5th. My wife went to pick him up, and she was just like, OMG, it is insane over there, you know? So it's like Main Street, some of these neighborhoods have become, like Riverstone, a destination to go trick-or-treating. And if you are coming into it, there's not like a parking lot to say, park here and now go trick-or-treating. Hence the cars everywhere.
Just drive down the road.
Yeah, that's, Barbara, I agree with you, though. You know, picking and choosing neighborhoods is kind of like making decisions about art on city council. It's fraught with peril. I don't know, other than to put traffic calming measures in the streets, big things you have to drive around, so everybody has to go really slow. But, I mean, you'd be putting us all over the city, so I don't know what we're going to tell the staff to do.
I would go along with directing staff to look at the issue. Maybe not just on Fourth Avenue, but, you know, what, are there other cities that do something? You know, what, if anything, can be done?
That sounds perfect. I think any measure that we do is better than what we have now.
Nothing, yeah.
Because I'm just really scared somebody's going to get hit by a car.
Yep.
Also, I mean, Halloween's just way bigger now than it was when I was a kid. Because it becomes like a destination to go do things versus just walk to the houses that are next to you.
Well, we used to have to trick or treat in our snowsuits because we typically always had snow in October. And so it was not nearly as fun as it is to be in your full costume.
Do we
need a motion?
Yes.
We'll sit down and talk about it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So make a motion?
No, you don't.
Oh, okay.
I think I've got general direction.
Tom's sitting there going, what?
Put it out barricades.
Big giant pumpkins in every.
Okay, city council comments. Anyone have anything they want to present right now?
That parking deck looks so good.
It does look good.
Oh, goodness. Wow.
Who knew a parking deck could be so pretty?
We did.
Just pat ourselves on the back. I would like to continue the discussion from Mr. Garvey's presentation regarding the EV infrastructure. So I don't know if we would prefer ESB to put together a sample resolution to present to the board, or how we would like to move that forward, but I would like to see it progress in some way.
Well, wouldn't it really be some type of ordinance? Like if we're talking about requiring people to put it in, wouldn't it have to be an ordinance?
Well, we want to recommend it. We don't want to necessarily require it.
I think the committee could make a recommendation to city council.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? City manager report.
Just a couple of things for information and one potential item to give us direction on. Cash and investment report is in your agenda for your information. Asked that the city council that we cancel the November 23rd, so we will need a motion to cancel the November 23rd city council meeting since that's been advertised, right, madam? Or
Yeah, you'll make a motion to amend your regular meeting schedule to eliminate the second meeting
so
in November.
we'll need to do that.
Can we do it right now?
Yeah, let's do that.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to amend our regular city council meeting schedule to cancel the November 23rd meeting.
Is there any discussion? No? Those in favor of canceling that meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Okay. That's the night before Thanksgiving.
Yes, and then the other thing for a little bit of direction is gentleman from Blythe Street requested the radar signs. We do have a set of radar signs that I believe. We'll check, So we'll check. I'm trying to think. 'Cause I, yeah, so we'll, let me come back to that. I thought we had a set that was not being used, and I'm not exactly sure about that now. So we'll come back to that. We'll bring that back to you.
May I follow up that comment? That's
Yeah.
what I told you on the phone.
Yeah.
So when I traveled in Germany, they have lots of those permanent ones. And what's so fun about them is if you're going at the speed limit below, you get a nice, pretty green smiley face.
Really?
And if you're going above it, you get a little frown that's like yellow or orange.
Yeah, I've
And
seen
I'll-
those too.
Yeah, and I was like, that works. I'm like, I like my smiley face. I just told him, I was like, that is so clever. It doesn't give you a number, it just, either you got a happy face or a smile, or a sad face if you're over the speed limit. So just thought, I thought that was pretty creative.
So we'll bring back an option regarding the radar signs when we come back. And then when we do closed session, I'm going to remove one item that I was going to discuss in closed session. So I have an alternate motion. We'll just take out number 6. So I'll ask Councilman Smith to do that when you're ready.
Okay,
Are we ready?
I think we are.
Madam Mayor, I move that City Council enter closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11, A, 1, and 3, to prevent the disclosure of information that is privileged or confidential pursuant to the law of this state or of the United States, or not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the general statutes, to consult with an attorney employed or retained, not retrained, it'd be bad, or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body, and to discuss the matter of O'Neill v. City of United States, 22 CVS 1738.
Okay.
Just for
Is
the
there-
record, I'd like to retain the attorney.
Okay, any discussion? Not those in favor of entering closed session for the reason